Chapter 263. We're back. After pushing open the door of Jiang Hai's mansion, Selena Gomez's voice entered the room. Hearing her voice, Jiang Hai walked out of the kitchen while cracking eggs. What he saw was still the same four people. Just as Jiang Hai thought, Aphrodite and the others had already left. In fact, although Aphrodite and the others had a lot of fun with these women today, these women were actually very vigilant. This could be seen from the fact that they didn't make any sound in front of these people. So if these people invited them back for dinner, they definitely wouldn't come back. It was precisely because of this that only 4 people came back tonight: Pra Walton, Selena Gomez, Chi Li, and Chi Li's assistant. Well, Jiang Hai still couldn't remember her name. Go take a shower in the room and come down, dinner is almost ready. Looking at the few people in front of him, they were obviously not in good condition. Pra Walton and Selena Gomez's bodies were still stained with fine sand, and their faces and bodies were also stained with salt left by the sea after being dried by the sun. As for Chi Li and her assistant, although they were much neater, it was still on the beach. However, on the beach, it was still a sunny day. Although they had umbrellas, they were wearing women's suits. They were still sweating profusely. Obviously, they were not in a good state. Jiang Hai's words, this time, these women did not refuse. Selena and Pra Walton immediately went upstairs, but Chi Li and her assistant hesitated for a moment. "Oh, I haven't asked yet, are you going to live here too?" Looking at the two, Jiang Hai patted his forehead. It seems that he hasn't arranged a place for them to live yet. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Chi Li raised her head and said with a serious face, "Of course, can't we?" Seeing that she was obviously not in good condition, but still pretending to be arrogant, Jiang Hai couldn't help but smile. This woman is really... Sometimes I miss her. Okay, I'll take you upstairs. After handing the egg liquid to Daliana, Jiang Hai took the two upstairs. Maybe because Jiang Hai felt that the two people's relationship with Pra Walton wasn't very good, he also arranged their room, across from Pra Walton's. For Jiang Hai, watching a good show was the happiest thing in the world. "This is your room, go take a shower, change your clothes, and come down for dinner, I guess you're hungry." Carrying the two people's luggage, Jiang Hai came to the front of the guest room, put the luggage at the door, and turned to leave. "Jiang Hai, I think we should talk, have a good talk, I don't know when you have time." But as soon as Jiang Hai left, Chi Li had already stretched out her hand, grabbed Jiang Hai's wrist, and looked at Jiang Hai with a serious face. "Oh, since you are here, I think we will have time to talk." Hearing Chi Li's words, Jiang Hai didn't look back, but just said a sentence calmly. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Chi Li's eyes were a little hesitant, but she still let go of Jiang Hai's hand. The moment she let go, Jiang Hai continued to walk forward, and soon disappeared at the corner of the stairs. Seeing Jiang Hai's appearance, Chi Li's assistant also puffed up her face and said unhappily, "President Chi, look at his attitude. He left us on the beach for half a day, and now he doesn't even give us time to meet." To be honest, after she came here, she did change her view of Jiang Hai. This Jiang Hai seemed to be a bit interesting. Although she didn't know where he got the money to build this villa, at least as Chi Li's assistant, she knew very well that Jiang Hai didn't use the name of Chi Li or the Chi family to get this villa, and now it seemed that he had some cooperation with the world's largest retailer, Walmart, which was really unexpected. In the past, she felt that Jiang Hai was a mud that couldn't be supported, but when this mud began to shine, she was a little confused. But this didn't mean that she could tolerate Jiang Hai's arrogance. They had already delivered themselves to his door, but he still took it. This guy. Hearing her words, Chi Li narrowed her eyes, but there was no expression of anger on her face. Instead, she directly picked up her luggage and went to the room. Seeing that Chi Li didn't speak, the assistant could only helplessly open her mouth, and finally helplessly enter the next room. As for Jiang Hai at this time, he didn't know if he was careless or what, but after he went downstairs and entered the kitchen, he had already forgotten about this matter. Facts proved that Jiang Hai was indeed not the kind of person who liked to think about unrequited love, nor was he the kind of person who liked to think too much. About 10 minutes later, the four women went downstairs, and Jiang Hai had already prepared dinner. Jiang Hai's dinner had a total of 8 dishes. This was also the habit of Huaxia people. 6, 8, 10, these were all very auspicious numbers. 6 was 6, 6 was good luck, 8 was good luck, 10 was 10, 10 was 10, 10 was beautiful. Of course, December's lunar red was also good, 16 was good, 18 was good, but Jiang Hai couldn't make it. So, he only had a total of 8 dishes. The most eye-catching dishes were 2 plates of lobsters and a plate of steamed lobsters. This meter-long lobster lying on the plate was really quite scary. There was also a plate of lobsters, baked with cheese, which was made by Mrs. Philemon. In fact, it was also a dish she had just learned after coming here. After all, with the income of a cowboy, even if they bought lobsters, they would only buy small lobsters. Those lobsters could be eaten as snacks, and it was too troublesome to make them with cheese. This was all learned after coming to Jiang Hai. Around the 2 plates of lobsters, there were 6 dishes: steamed abalone, scallion braised sea cucumber, which was made by Jiang Hai, and fried grouper strips, which was made by taking off the flesh of the grouper and placing it on an iron plate to fry. Generally, this was the way to fry cod strips. Jiang Hai didn't have many opportunities to fry grouper, and this kind of fish tasted best when steamed. But considering that Pra Walton and Selena Gomez weren't used to steamed dishes, it wasn't bad to make it this way. In addition to these 3 dishes, there were 3 other dishes. Of course, the main dish, the steak, was divided into 2 portions by Jiang Hai. One portion was a fried steak that could be eaten directly with a fork, and the other portion was a steak like in a Western restaurant, 1 portion per person. These were all specially selected beef, but the ones that were eaten whole with a fork were the worst among the specially selected beef. The good ones were all made like that. In addition to the 2 steaks, there was also a large bowl of vegetable and fruit salad. This was today's dish, and there was also a large bowl of cheddar soup on the side, which was a must-have. Other than that, the main dish was white bread. After these things were arranged, Mrs. Philemon left first, and Jiang Hai's group of 7 stayed to eat. The 7 of them also sat down under Jiang Hai's signal, but there were some rules when they sat down. Jiang Hai naturally sat at the main seat, and the 2 seats beside him were for Delina and Marian. After all, these 2 were also the masters of this place. But next to Delina were Pra Walton and Selena Gomez, and next to Marian were Chi Li and her assistant. But after her assistant came downstairs, her original dissatisfaction disappeared. At this time, her eyes were only on the 2 lobsters, the large plate of 2-headed abalone, the large plate of sea cucumber, and countless steaks. She suddenly felt that Jiang Hai was quite good, at least she didn't have to worry about not being able to eat good food with him. Since you're all here, sit down and eat. Seeing everyone sit down, Jiang Hai sat at the main seat and smiled at everyone. He was not a Westerner, nor was he a Huaxia scholar. He didn't have anything to be particular about. Whether it was others who invited him to eat or he invited others to eat, the most important thing was to feel comfortable and comfortable. Extravagance and etiquette didn't work for him. He didn't want to be controlled by others when he was eating. Jiang Hai, aren't you going to introduce them first? Seeing Jiang Hai picking up the fork to eat the steak, Chi Li couldn't help but cough lightly, then raised her head and looked at Jiang Hai. What's there to introduce? Didn't I introduce them just now? Pra Walton, Selena Gomez. Hearing Chi Li's words, Jiang Hai asked with some doubts, but Chi Li rolled her eyes at him, and at the same time, signaled to his side with her eyes. At this time, Jiang Hai remembered that Chi Li wanted him to introduce Delina and Marian. This is Delina Iveline, my adopted daughter. This is her twin sister, Marian Iveline. This is Pra Walton, you've met in the morning. She's the god of wealth who came to give your dad money this time. This is Selena Gomez, haven't you heard her songs before? As for these 2, this is Chi Li, your dad's. Since Chi Li wanted to introduce them, Jiang Hai didn't say much, and directly introduced them at the dining table. It was fine when he first introduced Pra Walton, but when he introduced Qi, Jiang Hai hesitated a little, because he didn't know what to introduce. It seemed like he only said that she was his friend on the beach just now, so he should call her his friend now. But before Jiang Hai finished his words, Qi interrupted Jiang Hai, "I'm your mother, his wife. My name is Qi. Maybe you've heard him talk about me, maybe you haven't, but it doesn't matter. This is a gift I brought from China, I hope you like it." Listening to Qi's standard English pronunciation, Jiang Hai was stunned, Walton and Selena Gomez were stunned, even Delina and Marion were stunned, including Qi's assistant. At this time, countless eyes were looking at her. Chapter 264. However, under the gaze of these people, Qi seemed to treat them as air. She just took out 2 wrapped gifts from her bag and deliberately stood up. Then, she placed one gift in front of the 2 girls. President Qi. Looking at the 2 boxes, Qi's assistant was a little stunned. Others might not know what those 2 gifts were, but she knew very well that those 2 gifts were not cheap. Moreover, they were custom-made. It could be said that in this world, there were only these 2 things, and there was no third. Originally, the assistant thought that Qi prepared them for her mother. Now, it seemed that they were prepared for the 2 girls. However, at this time, not only the assistant was more confused, but Jiang Hai was also more confused. He really wanted to ask this woman what she meant. Was she trying to trick him? However, it was really difficult for him to ask this question. After all, there were outsiders here. Therefore, he just looked at Delina and Marion. At this time, the 2 girls were also a little confused. They didn't understand what was going on. Why did a mother suddenly appear? They knew about the things between Jiang Hai and Qi in China, but they didn't know the details. Now, it seemed that a mother from China came to find them. Accept it. Although he was a little confused, a little puzzled, and a little unhappy, Jiang Hai still nodded. After all, there were outsiders and children here. Jiang Hai couldn't say too much. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Delina and Marion also opened the gift boxes in front of them. This was also the difference between foreigners and Chinese people. After Chinese people received the gift, they didn't open it immediately. Instead, they would wait until they went home to open it. In this way, it was hard to say whether the other party had more money or not. After all, people cared about their face. However, people in the United States were more accustomed to opening the gift and then expressing their love. This also gave the giver a chance to show his face in front of others. Of course, if the gift wasn't good, then showing his face would become a disgrace. However, obviously, Qi, who had been in the United States for so long, knew this. In addition, she was very confident in her gift. When the gift boxes were opened, 2 diamond bracelets appeared in front of the 2 girls. Wow, it's so beautiful. These 2 bracelets were obviously designed by a famous designer. It was very likely that it was a limited edition. The base should be platinum, and in the middle of the platinum, there should be 10 diamonds. The main diamond is about 1 carat, and the other 9 diamonds are more than 50 cents. This bracelet's diamond alone is worth about $10,000. In addition to the design fee and the platinum, this bracelet is worth about $20,000. This is the most expensive gift. This is a little too expensive. Jiang Hai glanced at the 2 bracelets. Although he didn't know how much they cost, he knew that they definitely wouldn't be cheap since they were so shiny. Therefore, he said to Qi hesitantly, "Is this for you?" "It's for the children. Since you agreed to accept it, it has nothing to do with you. Don't look at it first. You can look at it when you go back to your room." However, Qi retorted after hearing Jiang Hai's words. When she saw that Jiang Hai was a little speechless, Qi changed her style and instantly became a good wife and mother. She looked at the 2 girls in front of her and said gently. The 2 girls looked at her, looked at each other, and nodded at her. Then, they gestured a thank you with their hands and put the gift box away. However, they put it behind their chairs like they treasured it very much. Jiang Hai had always been raising these two girls according to the principle of adopted daughters. Although he didn't spoil them, it could be said that he spoiled them very much. Except for sleeping with him, he gave them whatever they wanted. Clothes, toys, TVs, game consoles, computers, mobile phones, iPads, and so on. These two girls had everything that other people's children had. Moreover, they were all of the best quality. However, Jiang Hai had never bought such expensive jewelry before. Then let's eat first. Seeing that this matter seemed to be over, Jiang Hai sighed helplessly and asked everyone to start eating. As for the assistant that he hadn't introduced, well, who would care about her? As Jiang Hai moved his knife and fork first, everyone started to eat. Jiang Hai cut the beef. Daliana, Marian, and Selena Gomez each got a piece of fish. Compared to beef, Daliana and Marian preferred to eat fish because they often ate fish when they were homeless. Fish was much cheaper than beef, so they had been used to eating it. As for Selena Gomez, she purely wanted to maintain her figure. Since she came to Prawalton, her target was beef. Naturally, she also cut beef. Chi Li's assistant's eyes didn't leave the lobsters and abalones when they were on the table. Now that the meal started, she immediately got an abalone to eat. This was a wild abalone that had been raised in cold water for many years. Naturally, its taste was much better than those raised in China. Even compared to those in Australia, it was much better than those in China. Whether it was fish or seafood in cold water, due to the environment, they could only grow for a few months in a year. However, they could grow for a year in temperate and tropical areas. Therefore, a fish that lived in temperate or tropical zones for a year would have to live in cold water zones for a few years. The constant stimulation of the cold water made the meat firm and sweet. In terms of taste, the seafood in cold water zones was indeed more delicious than those in temperate or tropical zones. Just like now, although it was the simplest cooking method, the assistant's eyes lit up as soon as she ate it. Compared to her assistant, Chi Li's first goal was to eat the vegetable salad. However, seeing that her assistant was eating so happily, she ate the cheesy lobster instead. The lobster meat had already been torn, and there was a layer of mozzarella cheese on it. The rich taste of cheese had already drifted in the air. This made the assistant, who hadn't even swallowed the abalone, swallow her saliva crazily. Chi Li forked the piece of lobster with cheese and put it into her mouth. Her eyes instantly lit up. Oh, delicious. The lobster's taste was a little like that of shrimp, but it was 100 times firmer and dozens of times more delicious. Its meat was fresh and tough. If one used their teeth to tear it, it would be a little troublesome. The cooked lobster already tasted pretty good. Now, there was cheese on top. It didn't destroy the original taste of the lobster. Instead, it made the lobster, which was originally fresh, tough, and thick, had an even stronger taste of cheese and milk. It really made people salivate just by looking at it. This lobster is really good, but compared to Jiang Hai's steak, it's a far cry. Looking at the two people eating with grease dripping from their mouths, Selena Gomez also took a small bite and said with a smile. Hearing her words, the two people, who were still fighting over the abalone and lobster, looked at the steak in front of them with some confusion. To be honest, they had already seen the steak at the first moment. But the appearance of the steak, Jiang Hai didn't care about that when cooking. Because it was almost fully cooked, there was inevitably a layer of slightly charred black on top of the steak. Coupled with the black pepper sauce, it could be said that a piece of charcoal was beautified and placed there to deceive a lot of people. Compared to steak, seafood looked much better. Huaxia food was particular about color, fragrance, and taste. The first was color. If the food wasn't good-looking, how could they eat it? Originally, if Selena Gomez was the only one talking, the two people would hesitate for a moment. However, when Chi Li saw that Prawalton was about to finish the steak in the distance, she knew that there must be something behind the steak. Otherwise, that woman wouldn't be so interested in it. She temporarily put down the other food in her hand and looked at Jiang Hai's steak. She picked up the knife and fork and cut a piece of it. As Chi put the steak in her mouth and bit it, the thick lean meat wrapped in the marbled texture and the melted fat inside the steak instantly gushed out of her mouth. The beef was firm, fresh, and tender, and it constantly attacked her taste buds and teeth. Once she took a bite of this kind of steak, it was almost impossible to stop her mouth from eating it. Her eyes gradually became a little blurred. In a daze, she seemed to have returned to more than 10 years ago. She still remembered that her whole family went to the capital with her father. Because at that time, her father brought back a girl, which made Chi extremely dissatisfied with her father. In order to please his eldest daughter, Chi's father took her to Japan for a trip. In Hyogo County, his father invited her to eat the beef there once. The taste of the beef was exactly the same as the beef she ate today. This is 5A grade beef? Looking at the almost charred beef in front of her, Chi was full of disbelief. Almost, to be exact, it should be specially selected grade beef. After all, we are not in Japan, but I believe the quality should not be worse than the Japanese. Hearing Chi's words, Jiang Hai also said with a smile. He is quite confident in his beef. At this time, Pra Walton also finished the steak. I think it's time for us to talk about our cooperation. As she put down the knife and fork, she also said to Jiang Hai seriously. Chapter 265. Oh. I'm all ears. To be honest, Jiang Hai had been waiting for her to talk about this for a long time. In fact, in Jiang Hai's opinion, these women were a little redundant. What's the point of having fun? It's better to just do what Mr. Zhang did. How many cows are directly ordered, how much meat is on those cows, how much is slaughtered, how much is exchanged, and that's it. Pra Walton still has to come to see and play, isn't it troublesome? But now, after all, it's a buyer's market. Although Jiang Hai can easily sell these cows, most places like Western restaurants can't accept more than 10,000 cows from Jiang Hai, although Jiang Hai's name has become famous this time. But it's only in New York. No one in the United States or Western United States knows who he is. So if Jiang Hai doesn't want to sell to the middleman at a low price, and he also wants to save trouble, this Pra Walton must be caught. Your beef here, to be honest, is better than I expected. If the full score of beef is 100 points, your beef can be 95 points, but now it's only 80 points. The 15 points deducted is because your chef is too bad. If I were you, I would have fired the chef. Raising his index finger, Pra Walton said with a serious face. Although she is a bit chinibu, sometimes she doesn't go to work, but when it comes to business, she won't joke. Oh, the beef is made by myself. In fact, if a chef really makes a dish like this, in fact, even if Pra Walton doesn't say it, Jiang Hai will fire him, but he made it himself, so there is no way to fire him. I already thought about it. Now let's talk about the truth. I haven't carefully looked at the ranch in your manor. I don't know what secret recipes you have, and I'm not interested in knowing. If I want to buy the whole cow, you won't agree, so let's calculate according to the slaughtered cow. After the cow is slaughtered, how much is the meat of each grade? Let's talk about it first. In fact, according to the working principle of Americans, they don't talk about business when eating, so naturally, they don't talk about business. Eating is eating, and there is nothing else mixed in, but Pra Walton knows that Jiang Hai is a Huaxia. As a Huaxia who has been in the United States for half a year, it is difficult for him to change the habits of Huaxia. Talking business at the dinner table is also one of the characteristics of Huaxia, so she can cater to his interests. If you can guarantee the quality of your beef cattle here, I can buy all your beef cattle. I think you are in this line of work, you should also know the current market price very well. The average premium grade beef is $375 per pound, the special grade beef is $130 per pound, the best grade beef is $50 per pound, the standard and commercial grade beef is useless to me, but I can also take it. After all, we still have places that sell beef normally in Walmart. The price I give you, you can consider it. I will give you a higher price for the premium grade beef, $380 per pound, the special grade beef is $140 per pound, the best grade beef is $55 per pound, the standard and commercial grade beef is according to the market price. I think you also understand that there is no profit in this. Looking at Jiang Hai, Paula Walton casually quoted the price. After listening to her words, Jiang Hai also calculated in his heart. Although his beef cattle will not be as bugged as in the competition, his beef cattle will not be as bugged as in the competition. But after these days of farming, he had earned a certain commission for the quality of his beef cattle. According to this price, he could sell one beef cattle for about $120,000 before tax. If he took all the rest, apart from the $2,000 that he had to give to Mr. Zhang, there would still be more than $11,000 left, which would be worth more than $1.2 billion. This was a big deal. To be honest, Jiang Hai was a little tempted. Wait a minute, the price you said is the price after you want to buy out our beef? But before Jiang Hai agreed, Chi Li had recovered from the shock and looked at Pra Walton seriously. Of course, seeing Chi Li looking at her, Pra Walton narrowed her eyes and said lightly, "I don't think this is a very reasonable price." Chi Li listened to her words and shook her head. "Oh? What's not reasonable?" Seeing Chi Li directly say that it is not reasonable, Pra Walton was a little surprised. "I can't deny that you want to reserve the rest of the beef. Let's not talk about the price of the beef. Let's not talk about the special selection, the best selection, the standard and the commercial price. The price of the special quality beef is a bit inappropriate." Taking a look at Paula Walton, Keely's mind spun rapidly. After all, not long ago, she also lived in the United States for a few years, so she has some understanding of the price of beef. As a rich second generation in China, especially a woman, she knows how cheap beef is in the United States, and how expensive top-grade beef is. Compared with most people in China who don't know about the grading of beef, Chi at least knows a little about it, although she doesn't know much about it. In general, the special quality beef in the United States is equal to the 4A and 5A grade beef in Japan. But the price of 4A and 5A grade beef is different in Japan. Now Pra Walton directly fixed the price, which is obviously to make Jiang Hai confused. Maybe some people will say that it is actually good to fix the price like this, because after all, there is beef better than this standard, and there is beef worse than this standard. But don't forget, there must be a ratio between the two, and the good beef should be much less than the bad beef. For example, Jiang Hai's beef, the retail price of a special grade beef is more than $375. Even in New York and other places with higher sales costs, it can reach more than $400. Especially good grade 5A beef can even be sold for $420, $430 or more. The price difference between these is not just a few pieces of meat. She doesn't know much about beef, but she is after all a businesswoman. She feels that the price above must be fluctuating. If that's the case, what's the price? Hearing Chi Li's words, Pra Walton gently tapped Jiang Hai's long oak table with her hand and looked at Chi Li with a playful look. "We still need to discuss this. Didn't you come here to have fun? Then you don't need to be in a hurry." Chi Li knows that at this time, it is not a good thing to reveal the bottom price. Moreover, she doesn't know much about this manner. In the principle of not letting Jiang Hai suffer losses in front of her, she still said very indifferently, "Well, I didn't expect Jiang Hai to be a henpecked man." Looking at Chi Li's domineering look, Pra Walton is not in a hurry. Originally, she just gave a tentative price. She really came here to have fun. But she also came here to discuss business. Compared with those who do anything to make money, she is more polite. At least the price she offered is not too outrageous, but since she was seen through by others, she doesn't care. She is not an ordinary businesswoman with a small pattern. She is Pra Walton, the person in charge of Sam's Club of the Walmart family. In fact, Chi Li's skill is still far from hers, but she is very interested and continues to watch. Oh. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai really doesn't know how to respond. After all, there is no need to make the matter between him and Chi Li known to everyone, so at this time, it is better for him to remain silent. Well, after dinner, is there anything else? Looking at Jiang Hai, Walton said with a smile. As if the woman who just returned to the Ice Queen has nothing to do with the woman in front of him. He had to admit that the speed at which this woman changed her face really made Jiang Hai dumbfounded. No. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai said to her very clearly. Hearing Jiang Hai's direct words, Walton didn't care. She said hello to the others, especially to Selena Gomez, and then went upstairs. Looking at her appearance, Selena Gomez smiled awkwardly. She is such a person. She is actually a little embarrassed to come with her, but sometimes she can't say it. Well, she is full, but I am not full yet. Everyone, continue. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the table that had been paused at this time became lively again. Of course, the main reason is that there is Chi Li's assistant. This girl was really a foodie. Although she was using a fork, which was not her best weapon, she was still invincible on the dining table. Especially after knowing that the steaks were delicious, her fork danced even faster. It is hard to understand how the food is in her stomach. I have to admit that this girl is actually good-looking and has a good figure, but eating like this doesn't seem like it. All in all, the meal is still very harmonious. Except for some small mistakes, everything else is within Jiang Hai's expectations. After the meal, Chi Li touched her belly that is already a little round. She took her assistant back to the room, and Selena Gomez also went back to her room. Daliana and Marian also helped Jiang Hai to tidy up and went back to their room to look at the bracelet. Although they didn't say it, it is obvious that they really like the gift Chi Li gave them this time. This is also what gives Jiang Hai the most headache. After all, in his opinion, he and Chi Li didn't seem to have reached this point. After tidying up the dinner, Jiang Hai returned to his room and threw his body on the big bed. Then, he rubbed Goldie's head that was not released because there are guests at night. He looked at the ceiling. He has a feeling that this time, Chi Li is very likely to come to talk to him about the matter between them. And according to the fact that she flew so far, it is impossible for her to cut him in half as he wishes. He is afraid that there will be more problems. Chapter 266. Tap 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 tap. The sound of high heels hitting the wooden floor echoed in Jiang Hai's villa. For this sound, whether it was before or now, the people and beasts in Jiang Hai's villa were not used to it. The people who heard this sound were fine, they might not care, but Goldie and Xiao Bai woke up immediately. Feeling the reaction of these two dogs, Jiang Hai also sat up from his sleep. It's not that he remembered, but after all, the incident a while ago didn't happen too long ago. Jiang Hai has to be careful now. After waking up, Jiang Hai took a look at the time. It was only 10:30 in the evening. Although it was completely dark outside, it didn't seem to be the time to sleep. Just now, Jiang Hai was lying in bed, thinking about Chi Li, and unknowingly fell asleep. As for the TV, it was turned off. Needless to say, Jiang Hai knew that it was Goldie who did it. Now their IQ is no worse than the children at home. Seeing that Jiang Hai fell asleep and turned off the TV, it's not a problem for them. Sometimes, they even help Jiang Hai with the quilt and so on. Of course, that's in winter. With the current temperature, Jiang Hai won't catch a cold even if he doesn't cover himself with the quilt at night. What's the situation? Shaking his head, Jiang Hai was also a little confused. He listened carefully and there was indeed the sound of high heels. Knock knock knock, just as Jiang Hai was puzzled, a light knock came from outside the door. Who is it? Although a little curious, Jiang Hai still got up from the bed and asked while walking forward. It's me. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Chi Li's clear voice also came from outside the door. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai's footsteps couldn't help but stop, but he still walked to the door and opened it. Then a neatly dressed Chi Li appeared in front of him. Oh, it's so late, what's the matter? Looking at Chi Li, Jiang Hai asked with some doubts. He just fell asleep. You haven't slept yet? If you haven't slept, accompany me for a walk. Although Jiang Hai's words were somewhat puzzled and complaining, Qi Li didn't seem to hear the meaning of Jiang Hai's words. She still looked at Jiang Hai indifferently and said softly, "So late?" Looking at the sky outside, although it's 10:30, for people in the city, nightlife has just begun, but in Winthrop, to be exact, Zhang's Manor, it's already late at night. You don't want me to stand here all the time, then let's go. But Qi Li didn't give Jiang Hai a chance to refuse. Instead, she stood there and said to Jiang Hai. Although he was still a little sleepy, Jiang Hai also knew that he really needed to have a good talk with Qi Li, so after hesitating for a moment, he nodded and closed the door. After about 2 or 3 minutes, when the door opened again, Jiang Hai had already put on his clothes. The two left Jiang Hai's villa one after the other. They walked along the street lamp area set up by Jiang Hai in the manor and slowly walked towards the beach. One had to admit that the night view of Jiang Hai's manor was actually very good. Because the air was not polluted, walking on the manor's road, one could see the sky full of stars, listen to the sound of the wind, and listen to the sound of the waves being rolled up and slapped on the beach. The street lamps weren't very bright, and the hazy feeling made people feel like they were in a fairy tale world. On the lawn in the distance, groups of fireflies were flying around in the grass, giving people a quiet and comfortable feeling. Jiang Hai and Qi Li walked side by side here, but one walked on the leftmost side of the road, and the other walked on the rightmost side of the road. The two's pace and breath were almost the same, but there was no trace of the intention to interact. Although such a scenery was beautiful, Jiang Hai was used to it, so now he just yawned and walked forward in a daze. Qi Li seemed to pay more attention to the scenery she saw along the way. Unknowingly, the two had been walking for more than 10 minutes. The lights in the distant villa were almost too far to see clearly. Jiang Hai gradually calmed down under the blow of the cold wind. Wiping his face, Jiang Hai asked Qi Li, "You called me out, what's the matter? Don't tell me you just want to find someone to accompany you to see the night view. This is one of them, but I called you out because I have something to tell you. But let's make it clear first, no matter what we talk about later, you must not be angry." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Qi Li still looked up at the sky and said indifferently, "Okay." Jiang Hai also understands that some things can't be solved by anger. Since she wants to talk, Jiang Hai won't easily lose his temper. The reason why he was so angry last time was because he felt that he was played. But this time, it's in my territory. Want to play with me? How can it be so easy? Let me ask first, did I do anything wrong to you? Hearing Jiang Hai agree, Qi Li's footsteps stopped. Since walking out of the villa, she faced Jiang Hai for the first time. A pair of big eyes just stood there, staring at Jiang Hai, and said word by word. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai's footsteps couldn't help but stop. No. Thinking about it carefully, although he had a hard time in the previous year, but to be exact, from the beginning, the other party had already made her intentions clear. She and Jiang Hai are not people of the same world. If from the beginning, Jiang Hai didn't consider the relationship between husband and wife and didn't want to be a toad eating swan meat, he might not be so disappointed. Of course, this is also a bit absolute. Relationship matters are not like business. It's not so back and forth. If it's really like business, then it's fine. Qi Li and Jiang Hai are together just to use Jiang Hai to stabilize the Qi family, and Jiang Hai and Qi Li are together just for the 400,000 yuan to tide over the difficulties. If he had already thought it through before getting married, maybe Jiang Hai wouldn't be as sad as before. It's precisely because she gave him hope and then destroyed it that makes Jiang Hai the most sad. It's also because of this reason that Jiang Hai wants to get rid of this woman so much after having a golden finger. But now when Qi Li asked him what he had done wrong to Jiang Hai really didn't know what to say. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Qi Li turned her head and continued to walk forward, and then said slowly, "It's not that easy. Can you tell me why you are so determined to divorce me? Because it was a mistake between us. You don't love me. The funny thing is that I used to hope that you might look back at me. But you didn't do so for more than a year, so I woke up. You and I are not people from the same world. Since you don't like me and you don't want to be with me, then I don't want to be with you anymore. I don't like to kiss someone's cold butt. Oh, I'm sorry, this analogy is not very good. Hearing Qi Li's words, Jiang Hai also spoke slowly. Although he recalled some bitterness in the past, fortunately, he was used to it. So later, I felt that our marriage was actually a mistake. Instead of this, it's better to break it off directly. You can live the life you are familiar with, find a man who likes you and you like, and can help you in your career, and I will continue to live a lazy life. I feel that this kind of life where we don't interfere with each other is what we need. Gently tapping his heels, Jiang Hai said as he walked forward. So, you made the decision for me? Still not looking at Jiang Hai, Qi Li walked slowly and spoke slowly. It's not about who makes the decision for whom. The main thing is that one of us has to take this step. You and I are together for nothing more than to stabilize the Qi Enterprises. Now that the Qi Enterprises has stabilized, I am no longer an important decoration. As for me and you, apart from the naivety and desire of a toad to eat a swan's meat, the main reason is that 400,000 yuan. I'll return the 400,000 yuan to you. If you feel that it's not enough, you can pay me 4 million yuan, 40 million yuan, or even 400 million yuan. Take it as me paying for our relationship. Kicking the pebbles on the road, Jiang Hai was a little excited, but after the excitement, he remembered the agreement between him and Qi Li. He took a deep breath and calmed down again. 400 million yuan? You are really rich. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Qi Li smiled softly and said with a serious face. To tell you the truth, if you want to buy my Prawalton tonight, according to her offer, I can make almost 1 billion yuan, US dollars. After deducting the tax, there will be at least 600 million yuan left. If you want, I can give it all to you. Looking at Qi Li's face, Jiang Hai said sincerely. Now that he has spiritual energy, money is actually just a string of numbers for him. Even if he doesn't make a penny this year, he can guarantee that he will make a lot of money next year. He now has such confidence and such strength. I really didn't expect you to be so rich. I really didn't expect that you would be so much richer than me now. It seems that my mother's vision was really good back then. She chose you to be my husband at first glance. However, you may be wrong. You and I have known each other for more than 20 years. Although there were more than 10 years in between when we went our separate ways, you should know what kind of person I am. No one doesn't like money, but my desire for money can't override my thinking. Hearing that Jiang Hai could give her 4 billion yuan so easily, Qi Li was also a little surprised. When a man was willing to give all his wealth to a woman, either he loved the woman very much, or he was extremely disappointed with the woman. He would rather use all his wealth in exchange for freedom. Then what do you want? Listening to the meaning of Qi Li's words, Jiang Hai felt that she didn't intend to divorce him. This time, Jiang Hai was also a little helpless. He couldn't help but shake his hand and said to her with some annoyance. However, his appearance didn't scare Qi Li. Instead, Qi Li raised her head and said faintly, I want you. Chapter 267. The sea breeze blew through Jiang Hai's manor with a faint fishy smell and the smell of green grass. On the path inside the manor, Jiang Hai and Qi Li stood there, looking at each other. When Jiang Hai heard Qi Li's words, his eyes widened unconsciously. His mouth opened so wide that a fist could be stuffed in. He really didn't expect Qi Li to say that. What does she mean by that? Doesn't she know that I will misunderstand? Cough, I must be thinking too much. She definitely didn't mean that. Looking at Qi Li, Jiang Hai swallowed a mouthful of saliva and forced himself to hide his shocked expression. Then he whispered in his heart, but his eyes unconsciously looked at Qi Li. Tonight, Qi Li was dressed very formally, just like her usual style. She wore a slim-fit woman's suit with a corset waist. It seemed to be a brand, but Jiang Hai didn't know. Inside, she wore a white woman's blouse with flowers. She was wearing a short striped checkered skirt. Of course, this was just for show. She also had a pair of tight-fitting leather pants. Below the leather pants was a pair of women's black high-heeled boots. She looked fashionable, but also had a sense of strictness. Whether you believe it or not, at the beginning, I really didn't mean to give up on you. Although, as you said, the main purpose of marrying you is to stabilize the Qi family, at least I didn't think of having a second marriage. You are my husband, that's all. Not knowing whether it was because of Jiang Hai's expression or because Qi Li was a little surprised by what she said, she immediately turned around and walked forward as if she wanted to explain what she had just said. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also turned around and continued to walk with her. But this time, he didn't walk side by side with her. Instead, he deliberately walked half a step behind because Jiang Hai suddenly didn't know how to face her. Under normal circumstances, he wouldn't refuse a woman who came to him. After all, he wasn't a good person. However, he had to be careful when it came to Qi Li. His sixth sense, well, in fact, it was all senses. He could clearly feel that he was no match for her. It would never be wrong to be careful. Qi Li didn't look at Jiang Hai at this time and just slowly said her original thoughts. When I married you, I did have some resistance, but it wasn't because of you. It was mainly because my heart was filled with hatred. So, the day after the wedding, I returned to the capital. I wanted to consolidate the Qi family. The Qi family can't be destroyed in my hands. I want revenge. If I let the An family know that, the Qi family won't be destroyed. Whether it was true or not, Jiang Hai didn't know, so he couldn't interrupt and just continued to walk with her. I'm not a woman who likes to take credit, but there are some things that I feel it's better to make clear to you. I may have forgotten you, but I've never given up on you, nor have I let you down. In fact, when I called you for the first time, I was also prepared to ask you to come to the capital. Of course, it's not that I'm really unwanted, to the extent that I have to find you to repay you with my body. I'm going to give you a chance to prove yourself. If you prove yourself, we may be the most compatible people in the world. Even if you can't prove yourself, I'm not going to divorce you. To be exact, no matter how bad it is, it will just drag on. In my heart, I've never had the slightest thought of betraying you. Qi Li walked in front and kept talking about her true thoughts. Some of these words were good, some were bad, and some were harsh to Jiang Hai's ears. However, he felt that these words should be true, because even if she wanted to deceive people, she couldn't deceive people completely. Only when it was 30% false and 70% true could she deceive people. Jiang Hai didn't know whether Qi Li was telling the truth or not, but Jiang Hai was willing to listen to her. I don't understand why. I don't understand. Even if you're rich now and don't want to be by my side anymore, don't want me to give you another chance, and don't want to rely on me like this anymore, I don't seem to have any restrictions on you. When we were in Ice City, I saw you in that situation, and I didn't say anything. In the US, let's not talk about you staying obediently. Let's not talk about Pra Walton, Selena Gomez, and your 2 daughters. Just the 8 girls in the manor, they have good figures, ages, height, and looks. Let's not talk about you not having any relationship with them. Maybe you don't have any feelings for them, but they have feelings for you. Forget it, it's meaningless to talk about this. It's your business. However, as she spoke, Qi Li's words became a little sour. Hearing Qi Li's words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but feel a little stunned. Was this really Qi Li, that strong woman? Could it be that she was pretending? It's useless to talk about this. I came here this time to relax. Recently, the air in China isn't very good, so I came here to recuperate. Secondly, and most importantly, I feel that we should sort out our relationship. At this point, Qi Li looked at Jiang Hai very seriously. Since you don't want me to give you a chance to change your mind, I don't want you to change your mind. Since you don't need me to give you a chance now, and you don't want to change your mind, then let's think of a compromise. I'm not ready for a divorce yet. Moreover, domestic affairs are not as simple as you think. The waters are murky. The title of a married woman is still useful to me. At least when I go to negotiate some contracts, those people who make things difficult for me will be much less difficult. Therefore, I won't divorce you, but you can rest assured that I have no intention of taking your manor and your money. After I go back, I will ask a lawyer to write a certificate. In the future, I won't take a single cent of your money. I won't interfere too much with your life here, but you can't divorce this marriage. Taking a deep breath, Qi Li said a lot of words in one breath. Then, she looked at Jiang Hai and said with a serious face. She knew that the relationship between her and Jiang Hai was indeed a little delicate. It was impossible for her to come and beg Jiang Hai softly. However, if she didn't make it clear, then Jiang Hai would really force her to divorce him. She didn't know if Jiang Hai was afraid or for other reasons. Anyway, now Jiang Hai was eager to get rid of her. However, after Qi Li's investigation, she found that Jiang Hai didn't live with anyone else. Secondly, he didn't have a girlfriend. This wasn't because of a change of heart that made him determined to divorce her. As long as no one stirred up trouble, based on her understanding of Jiang Hai, she was confident that she could convince Jiang Hai. Sure enough, after hearing her words, Jiang Hai was a little hesitant. Just like Qi Li said, Jiang Hai was in a hurry to divorce her not because he wanted to start a new relationship. To be honest, the only thing he had in mind was Shite Clive. The other women were just so-so. Jiang Hai wouldn't give up his feelings for them. It was probably the same for the other women. The reason why he wanted to say goodbye to Lu Li as soon as possible was because he was a little angry at the beginning. Secondly, he felt that he had waited for too long and it wasn't worth it. However, just like Qi Li said, she didn't owe him anything, didn't do anything to let him down. She also didn't have any thoughts about his manner or his money. At the same time, she didn't care about his private life. As long as he didn't divorce her, everything else was fine. Since Qi Li had already said so, Jiang Hai really didn't have anything else to say. She had already made it clear that this identity was still useful to her. Jiang Hai didn't really want to force her. This wasn't his style. Therefore, looking at Qi Li beside him, Jiang Hai sighed. He felt that sometimes he was too soft-hearted. After hesitating for a moment, Jiang Hai looked at Qi Li and said slowly, "If you really want to sign the contract, then I'll consider it. However, I have to say the ugly words first. After all, I'm also going to get married. Although I don't have a clear partner yet, I'm not young anymore. I have to think about my own future." Although he was a very stubborn person, but sometimes his ears were soft. Before, Qi Li had refused to leave, so Jiang Hai thought that his little secret had been discovered. That's why she insisted on staying by his side. Now, after listening to her words, although he didn't know whether it was true or not, Jiang Hai still decided to do so. But even though his heart had already decided, although he had already made up his mind, he couldn't admit it so easily. It had to be said that sometimes men were so forgetful. Jiang Hai didn't think about the disdain he had received in the past and the suffering of being alone in an empty room. Although now it seemed that even if she wanted to come over and recommend herself, Jiang Hai still had to reconsider. However, if she really didn't want to divorce him, no matter what the reason was, Jiang Hai really didn't want to be too ruthless. "Phew, I didn't expect you to be so considerate. Thank you very much. I originally thought that I might have to pay some price." Although Jiang Hai didn't say it clearly, Qi Li had already understood. She turned her head and said to Jiang Hai with a smile. The strong and serious expression on her face was like winter snow at this time. This was the first time Jiang Hai saw Qi Li's smiling face since she was a child. Under the fireflies, starlight, moonlight, and hazy street lights, it was really beautiful. "What do you want to pay? What can you pay?" Looking at her, Jiang Hai asked subconsciously. But when he asked, he regretted it a little. This sentence was obviously a little flirtatious. Sure enough, Qi Li didn't answer, but snorted softly and walked quickly toward the road ahead. But at this moment, a low whimper came into Jiang Hai's ears. Chapter 268. Woo. But just as Jiang Hai was filled with emotion, a low whimper passed into Jiang Hai's ears. When he reacted, he only saw a pair of green eyes. At this time, they suddenly emerged from the lawn behind Qi Li. At the sight of these green eyes, Jiang Hai's heart subconsciously thumped. He wasn't superstitious enough to believe that there were demons and ghosts. However, there were green eyes in the lawn and a whimpering sound. Needless to say, there must be a beast in the lawn. Green eyes meant that the animal had night vision. Although there were no lions or tigers in North America, there were still many creatures with night vision. For example, the largest canine, the North American gray wolf, jaguar, puma, bear, and so on. But at this time, the North American gray wolf had been extinct for some time. Even if there were wild ones now, they were only in Yellowstone Park. It was unlikely to appear here. Jaguars were similar to the North American gray wolf. They had disappeared for a long time. Maybe there were still some in the Amazon jungle, but they definitely couldn't be seen in Boston. According to Jiang Hai's estimation, it couldn't be a bear, because the size of a bear was obviously impossible to hide in the grass. Jiang Hai still couldn't see it. So he ruled it out. Coupled with the legends he had heard before, the only possibility in Boston was a creature with night vision and a similar size. There was only one kind, puma, which was a mountain lion. There was once a mountain lion that went down the mountain and was shot dead by the police. When he bought the fur coat, Jiang Hai still remembered the shop assistant's words very clearly. If there was no accident, then this pair of green eyes should belong to this kind of beast. Be careful. Thinking of this, Jiang Hai had already rushed over, and the powerful explosive force was used in an instant. Before Qi Li could react, she was pulled into Jiang Hai's arms, and she was stunned for a moment. This was the first time a man had taken the initiative to pull her into his arms. In the past, even when she was dating in Zhangwu, she was always in the position of absolute initiative. Things like throwing herself into his arms, let alone doing it, she didn't even think about it. The two had been dating for 3 years. When they walked together in the first year, the distance between them was half a meter. In the second year, they could walk side by side on the road. Maybe it was because Qi Li didn't believe in men and marriage because her father gave birth to her second sister, so it was really difficult for her to walk into any strange man's heart. In the third year, they would look at the phone or hold hands while shopping. In Qi Li's eyes, this had already reached the point of marriage, but before they could talk, something happened. It could only be said that in Zhangwu was really a sad person. But today, her first time was buried in Jiang Hai's hands. However, Jiang Hai hugged her quickly, but he threw her even faster. Before she could react, Jiang Hai had already hugged her and spun her around in a circle, then threw her behind him. Then, there was a bang sound, and Qi Li's butt and the hard ground had an intimate contact, making her frown and grimace in pain. Just as she was about to ask Jiang Hai what was wrong with him, she saw a ferocious beast slowly walking out of the bushes. This beast looks like a lioness, but it looks slightly smaller than a lion. Under the hazy street lights, it looks very beautiful, but at the same time, it is also very hazy, but because of the night vision, its eyes are green, and the sharp and long canine teeth in its mouth means that it is definitely not a good thing. Jiang Hai is also standing here at this time, staring at it. Sure enough, it's this thing. Looking at his opponent, Jiang Hai's eyes narrowed, his body unconsciously arched, and his hands vigorously spread out, trying to make himself look bigger. This looked ridiculous to humans, but in nature, it was very useful. Making oneself look bigger was the only way to survive in nature. Jiang Hai didn't learn this, but it was as if he was born with it in his mind. He felt that it might be related to the tattoos on his body. Sure enough, seeing Jiang Hai's actions, the mountain lion, which was originally testing the waters, couldn't help but stop and look at Jiang Hai with some vigilance. Jiang Hai also looked at it with vigilance. The man and the beast looked at each other like this, looking for any opportunity to destroy. When the man and the beast stood still, Jiang Hai also put his hand in his mouth, and a clear whistle came out of his mouth. Hearing this whistle, the mountain lion opposite him was stunned, but when it heard the sound coming from the villa area in the distance, it knew that the human in front of it was calling for an accomplice, which made the mountain lion extremely angry. At that moment, it couldn't care less. Its body naturally crouched down, its hind legs kicked, opened its bloody mouth, and bit at Jiang Hai. Unfortunately, this guy chose the wrong opponent. Jiang Hai looked at the mountain lion pouncing on him. Instead of retreating, he moved forward. The first thing he did was to let go of his head. The mountain lion's pounce was very clever. It was equivalent to 3 strikes. The first was to use its body to knock the opponent down. If it didn't knock the opponent down, the second was to use its claws to firmly nail the opponent's flesh. If the claws were pulled out, there would be a bloody hole. This was to injure the opponent and also to stabilize its body. If the claws were fixed, the third move would be to bite. It wouldn't bite other places, but the throat, and kill in one blow. The speed and explosive power of a mountain lion were naturally faster than that of a human. Even if a person's reaction speed was extremely fast, it wouldn't be easy to dodge the pouncing attack of a mountain lion if it hadn't reached the limit. In other words, it was at the level of professional training. However, Jiang Hai wasn't an ordinary person after all. If he hadn't leveled up and encountered this mountain lion, he might have been able to dodge, but it was inevitable that he would be scratched and be at a disadvantage. However, now that his physical fitness was twice that of an ordinary person's, Jiang Hai could react. His brain could react, give orders, and his body could follow. His explosive power wasn't weaker than this lion's. Jiang Hai instantly dodged the pouncing attack of the lion and directly dived under the lion's stomach. Then, Jiang Hai directly punched the mountain lion's stomach with a rising dragon punch, causing the mountain lion to lose its balance in midair. Its body turned and fell heavily to the side. However, if a mountain lion was so easy to deal with, it wouldn't be a mountain lion. After landing, it scratched twice with its claws and was about to stand up and fight again. However, Jiang Hai wouldn't give it a chance to fight again. Just now, Jiang Hai tested it. Compared to this mountain lion, his physical fitness was twice that of a human's. There were advantages and disadvantages. In terms of strength, he naturally had the advantage. However, in terms of agility, explosive power, and speed, although he had some advantages, the advantages weren't very obvious. If he continued fighting like this, he could win, but he couldn't avoid being scratched and scratched. After all, he wasn't carrying a weapon at this time, so taking advantage of its weakness and killing it was a very important strategy. When animals were at their weakest, that was when they lost their balance. Therefore, before the mountain lion could get up, Jiang Hai had already pounced on its body. His legs instantly clamped on its stomach, and his hands wrapped around its neck. He kept exerting force, trying to subdue this guy. However, Jiang Hai had underestimated it. Although Jiang Hai was holding it in place, the mountain lion was still struggling and rolling on the ground. It wanted to throw Jiang Hai off, so much so that Jiang Hai's hands, which were wrapped around its neck, couldn't exert any strength. Looking at the dust flying in front of her, Qi Li was completely dumbfounded. She didn't know what to say, Her eyes were filled with the scene of the battle between Jiang Hai and the mountain lion. She never thought that Jiang Hai would be so strong. Suddenly, she realized that she didn't seem to know much about Jiang Hai. He knew how to raise cows and fish, and he had the ability to get the Walton family to come over and talk about cooperation with him. He could fight with such a lion barehanded. At least, she didn't even dare to think about such a thing in the past. Unknowingly, she had started to care about Jiang Hai because her toy had been stolen. Unknowingly, she felt that Jiang Hai had slowly walked into her heart. Just as she was in a daze, 2 figures suddenly flew past her. It was because of these two figures that she came back to her senses. When she looked at the center of the field, she saw that the two huge dogs she had seen outside Jiang Hai's room had already joined the battle. These two big dogs, any one of them is actually not smaller than the lion over there. In a one-on-one fight, the lion may not be a match, let alone a group of them. Moreover, there is Jiang Hai on his back. He wanted to scare off the two dogs here. However, just as it bared its teeth, the big gray wolf, Goldie, had already slapped it hard on the head. Goldie's sharp claws instantly opened 3 wounds on its face. Blood was already flowing out, and its flesh was also torn open. As for the big black dog, Xiao Bai, it rushed to the mountain lion's hind leg and bit it. Fortunately, the mountain lion was very smart. At the critical moment, it swept its tail and didn't directly bite the leg bone. Otherwise, with Xiao Bai's bite force, it would be crippled in the future. Even so, when Xiao Bai raised its head, it still took a big piece of meat from its thigh. A dog that bites doesn't bark, and a dog that barks doesn't bite. Although this sentence wasn't absolute, it seemed to make some sense now. Roar, roar. The pain and deterrence caused by the two dogs made the mountain lion panic and roar loudly. Chapter 269. Opportunity. However, its cry was an opportunity for Jiang Hai, who had been behind it the whole time. Jiang Hai's eyes lit up, and he exerted force with both hands. This time, the mountain lion did not have time to resist. It was firmly pressed under Jiang Hai's body. Feeling the power from Jiang Hai and the two vicious dogs beside it, the mountain lion, which had little strength left, surrendered this time. Other than gasping for breath, it did not move anymore. At this time, Robbins, Bell, Edward Anderson, and all the men in Jiang Hai's manor ran over with guns and cannons. Even Prawalton, Selena Gomez, and Chi Li's assistant, who had not come out yet, ran over. Especially the assistant, she was obviously frightened at this time. After all, for Prawalton and the others, guns were not prohibited in the United States. They were very calm when they saw guns. There must be something in the manor that required guns. Otherwise, it would be impossible to mobilize so many people. However, Chi Li's assistant had never seen such a scene. She even suspected that a war was about to break out. However, when she came over and found her general manager sitting on the ground, she immediately rushed over and helped her up. Following Chi Li's gaze, she saw a lion lying on the ground at this time. Jiang Hai and the two dogs surrounded the lion in the middle. For some reason, she suddenly felt that the lion was a little pitiful. It's a cougar. A cougar actually entered the manor. Seeing the animal under Jiang Hai, the people here could not help but feel a little surprised. Especially Belle and Marin Rupert, their faces were a little ugly. After all, they were responsible for patrolling the border. It was their responsibility to steal fish, and it was also their responsibility to invade from land. In the past, there were no helicopters, so there was no way to patrol so many times. But now that there are helicopters, they actually missed something. This is unacceptable for them. Hurry up and get a cage and put it in. Seeing that everyone was a little hesitant, Jiang Hai ordered loudly. Boss, this guy invaded our manor. Let's just kill it. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Belle's tone carried a trace of anger. A mountain lion entered the manor, this was his responsibility. Now, he just wanted to kill this guy to remind himself and vent his anger at the same time. Don't kill it first. I remember that this thing should be a protected animal. Let's catch it first. After thinking about it for a while, Jiang Hai decided that killing this guy was quite tempting. Not only could he taste the mountain lion meat, but he could also get a body of mountain lion skin. However, considering that the population of these guys wasn't very developed, and that he had to do business recently, he decided to do a good deed. So, Jiang Hai decided to pack it up first and think about it later. Hearing that Jiang Hai has already spoken, Belle and Robbins had to return to the manor and bring a cage that Jiang Hai used to store Xiao Bai and Xiao Huang. It's unknown whether this mountain lion is really weak or it has already admitted defeat. After Jiang Hai left, it did not struggle too much. Instead, it was really carried into the cage by Jiang Hai and others. What do we do next? Robbins asked in a low voice as he looked at the mountain lion lying there alone after entering the cage. Feed it something, then I'll call the police station and ask. After thinking for a while, Jiang Hai patted the soil on his body and said to Robbins. Then, he took out his phone from his pocket and called the police station. The police station was also surprised after learning that Jiang Hai caught a mountain lion alive, but according to the police station, this matter was actually not under their jurisdiction. If the mountain lion broke into the homestay and killed it, it was under their jurisdiction. But now that it has been caught, it was under the jurisdiction of the Wildlife Conservation Center. However, Winthrop is not a big town after all. Therefore, the Wildlife Conservation Center was actually located together with the Stray Pet Center. At this time, the center was already closed. Since Jiang Hai had already caught this thing, he would have to trouble him to send this thing to the town tomorrow. Hearing the police's words, Jiang Hai didn't care. After saying a few words, he hung up the phone. Then, everyone worked together and carried the mountain lion into Jiang Hai's villa. Then, Jiang Hai drove everyone back. It was late at night, and everyone was tired after coming out. It was better to go back and rest early. As for the sisters in Jiang Hai's villa, they were also driven back to sleep by Jiang Hai. Pra Walton and Selena Gomez didn't need Jiang Hai to tell them to go upstairs to sleep. Only Chi Li and her assistant stayed here. What can I do for you? Looking at Jiang Hai, who was squatting in front of the cage and still observing the animal, Chi Li hesitated and asked Jiang Hai. But when she asked, her face was a little red. It's okay, didn't we finish talking about our business? You go back to sleep, it's okay. However, Jiang Hai was clearly a person who didn't understand a girl's thoughts, so he just waved his hand and continued to stare at the mountain lion. Oh, I see, okay then. Seeing that Jiang Hai didn't seem to want her help, Chi Li couldn't help but stroke her hair a little disappointedly, then went upstairs with her assistant. But at this time, Jiang Hai didn't consider Chi Li's thoughts at all. His eyes were staring at the mountain lion. And the mountain lion was also staring at him. He had to admit that sometimes beasts had much better intuition than humans. Although it dared to confront Jiang Hai just now, at this time, the mountain lion was much more obedient. It just stayed there and looked at Jiang Hai cautiously. Regarding its gaze, Jiang Hai was quite satisfied. Then he stood up, went to get a basin of water for it, and went to the warehouse to get a piece of meat for it. This is a real ferocious beast. It's my first time seeing it and catching it, so I'm a little excited. Looking at the guy in front of him, Jiang Hai muttered softly. He finally understood why those rich people liked to hunt and hunt so much. It was because catching these beasts was indeed something to be proud of. Let's take a look at it before it's sent to town. Thinking of this, Jiang Hai directly sat on the ground. His house wasn't dirty, and the floor was cleaned by Aphrodite and the others every day. He just stared at the mountain lion like this with wistful eyes. As for the mountain lion, it didn't care about Jiang Hai's gaze. It was still lying in the cage, chewing on the meat and drinking some water from time to time. At this time, Chi Li, who had returned to the second floor, took one last look at Jiang Hai, who was still playing with the lion on the first floor, and couldn't help but mutter softly, "Blockhead." Then, she quickly walked to her room. CEO Chi, did you just say something? Chi Li's assistant, who was originally a little confused, vaguely heard Chi Li mutter something. However, she didn't hear it clearly, so she immediately asked. No, you heard wrong. Hearing her words, Chi Li naturally had to flatly deny. CEO Chi, should we change our itinerary? This place is really too scary. Not only are there lions, did you see that just now? Everyone here has a gun. That big beard is holding a gun. It's too scary. Is Jiang Hai really raising cows? Why do I feel like he set up a government armed force here? Hearing Qi Li's words, the assistant immediately took a step forward with a frightened expression. At the same time, she whispered to Qi Li, her eyes flashing. Are you willing to part with the food here? I still remember that during dinner, those 2 lobsters, those abalones, and those beef. TSK. Hearing her words, Qi Li didn't stop walking. As she walked, she said with a smile. Then let's have another meal before we leave. Hearing Qi Li mention dinner, the assistant became uncertain again. After hesitating for a long time, she finally stomped her feet, gritted her teeth, and said as if she had accepted her fate. However, Qi Li was too lazy to pay attention to her at this time. She walked back to her room and closed the door. She went to the bathroom to take a shower again, then threw herself on the big bed. At this time, it was almost 12 o'clock at night, but she didn't feel sleepy at all. Looking at the ceiling, she seemed to see the night when Jiang Hai hugged her and spun in circles to escape from the mountain lion's bloody mouth. Everything in those few seconds was as beautiful as a painting, except for the last moment. That guy is really a block of wood, but he's quite cute. I didn't expect that the hero saving the damsel in distress that I originally despised and thought was the most melodramatic was actually quite romantic when it was performed. If Jiang Hai hadn't made her fall, if Jiang Hai had asked her to stay with him on the first floor, if Jiang Hai had raised his head and gently said, "Are you all right?" After subduing the mountain lion, Jiang Hai had raised his head and gently said, "Are you all right?" That was such a pleasant thing to do. But unfortunately, none of these happened. But for Qi Li, even if none of these happened, tonight was already perfect. However, while she was happily sleeping, some people couldn't fall asleep. Bang! A glass bottle fell to the marble floor. And Zhangwu, who had been trying to win back Qi Li, was now drunk in his living room, and in front of him in the dining room, there were several photos. Photos of Qi Li and her assistant getting off the plane in Boston, photos of Qi Li and her assistant going to Jiang Hai's manor, and so on. Although there were no photos in the manor, it was obvious that a mature and beautiful woman took the initiative to throw herself into the arms of her nominal husband. There was no need to explain what would happen next. Chapter 270. I'm really grateful for your contribution to nature. This mountain lion is already pregnant. It probably felt the lack of resources in the mountains and the pressure of life was too great, so it entered human society. Looking at the mountain lion in the cage in front of her, the girl standing beside Jiang Hai spoke softly to Jiang Hai with a face full of affection. Last night, Jiang Hai looked at the mountain lion until past midnight before he lost his curiosity and went back to his room to sleep. After waking up this morning, the mountain lion had almost recovered. The recovery ability of wild animals was much stronger than that of domesticated animals, and this mountain lion was the same. After a night of recovery, in addition to water, food, and heating, the wound on the mountain lion's face caused by Xiao Bai had already formed a scar, and the piece of meat on its hind leg that was bitten off by Xiao Bai had also improved a little. Although Jiang Hai did not inject spirit energy into it, the beef in Jiang Hai's manor was nourished by a certain amount of spirit energy after all. Therefore, after the mountain lion ate the meat, its body improved a lot. Early this morning, he drove the mountain lion to the stray pet center in Winthrop with Robbins. This mountain lion would stay here for a while, and then Boston would send someone to bring it back to Boston or release it back to the Alabama mountains. With the current protection of the Alabama mountains in the United States, the chances of sending it back were higher than keeping it. Moreover, this mountain lion was an expectant mother at this time. Today was the best opportunity to restore the ecological balance. This is nothing. Hearing the girl's words, Jiang Hai smiled and waved his hand. In fact, he had always liked ferocious beasts. In the past, he did not have the opportunity to raise them, but now, it was not easy to raise them. This may seem nothing to you, but it maintains the ecological balance. Hearing Jiang Hai's nonchalant words, the girl also smiled. This was not the first time this girl and Jiang Hai had met. When Jiang Hai had come to adopt a dog, this girl had also received him. She and Jiang Hai could be considered acquaintances, but Jiang Hai still did not know her name. Listening to her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but stand up and look at the girl beside him. This girl is a typical American girl, about 1.7 meters tall. She doesn't look very old, has long blonde hair, and some small freckles on her face. She is very cute. Looking at the girl's eyes, Jiang Hai chuckled and slowly said, "If you really want to thank me, then, let me adopt that brown bear." At first, when she heard the first half of Jiang Hai's sentence, the girl thought that Jiang Hai was asking her out. However, when she heard the second half of the sentence, the girl was stunned. "Get out." Very straightforward words were said to Jiang Hai. Hearing what the girl said, Luo Binsi, who had been following behind Jiang Hai and the girl, could not help but shrug. "My boss really doesn't know how to pick up girls." In this way, although Jiang Hai and Luo Binsi were not kicked out, they were politely asked to leave. After leaving the stray pet center, Jiang Hai could not help but touch his nose. Compared to the mountain lion, he was more interested in raising a bear. Of course, it was because there were no tigers here. If there were tigers, he would also want to raise tigers. Thinking about the Arabian tycoons he had seen before, they raised lions, tigers, and leopards for fun. He was just envious at the beginning. Now that he had the capital to raise this thing, plus he had a special way to make these guys obedient, his heart was wild. Just as Jiang Hai was struggling there was a sudden knocking sound from the front. "What's the situation? Is someone organizing a parade in the town?" Hearing the music coming from the front, Jiang Hai asked curiously. "Oh, today is the Poseidon ritual." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Luo Binsi also took a look, but he knew what was going on with a glance, so he told Jiang Hai. "Poseidon ritual?" Hearing Luo Binsi's words, Jiang Hai was stunned. He really had not heard of this thing. Seeing Jiang Hai's curious look, Luo Binsi explained to Jiang Hai. After all, Winthrop was located by the sea. Because the land was not very rich, from the beginning, the eastern states here mainly relied on fishing for a living. Fishing, of course, they had to pray every year. When the fishing was rich, they also had to pray that the Poseidon would not be angry at any time and would not flood this place. Although when the United States appeared, it was no longer the time when feudal superstitions were mainstream. But sometimes people were like this. They would rather believe in something than not. For example, Catholicism. Now, the believers in the United States can be said to be the most in a single country. Of course, the proportion may not be as high as Europe because there are too few people in European countries. But in any case, the Poseidon ritual was still very popular here. This ceremony was just a ceremony from the very beginning. Everyone in the town would come to the seaside before summer and pray for good weather next year. Then, they would send some offerings, such as meat, and throw them into the sea. That was the end of the ceremony. The reason why this time was chosen was because summer was the time when the storm was the most violent. People who lived by the sea would know very well that generally speaking, typhoons or storms were the most frequent in summer. It was rare in spring, autumn, and winter, so this ritual was also chosen at this time. But in recent decades, this ritual had been regarded as a festival in Winthrop Town. Every year at this time, the town would have a band organize a parade. The parade would start from the town and end at the seaside. In the middle, there would be residents of the town joining in, making the whole scene very lively. When they arrived at the seaside and presented the sea god's gift, the ceremony would be considered complete. At this time, people would spontaneously organize a small market by the seaside. They could go there to exchange for some old appliances or other things that they needed. You could use money to buy or exchange things. In short, it was a flea market. After hearing Robin's introduction, Jiang Hai, who originally wanted to go back, was not in a hurry. He called back and asked Pra Walton, Selena Gomez, and Chi Li if they wanted to come. After knowing that they were not interested, Jiang Hai went by himself. It was understandable. If he asked these women if they wanted to go to the department stores in Boston to shop for luxury goods, they would definitely be interested. But going to a flea market? It was just a so-so. Let's go, Robbins. Let's go and have a look. Seeing the parade slowly walk in, Jiang Hai waved at Robbins and motioned for him to join the crowd. Since they were here to have fun, naturally, it would be fun to join the crowd. I won't go. I'll drive directly to the parking lot by the sea. Otherwise, I won't feel at ease leaving it here. However, when he heard Jiang Hai's words, Robbins shook his head. He was not at ease with the F-750. Although in the eyes of others, this car was just a good pickup truck, in his view, it was only 1/3 of the ranch. It was hard for anyone who wasn't a cowboy to understand their love for cows, horses, and pickup trucks. Jiang Hai saw that he really didn't want to come, so he could only shrug his shoulders and then join the parade. In fact, the parade was just following the flow of people around. Many of the residents in the town knew Jiang Hai, but Jiang Hai was really low-key. He hardly interacted with the residents of the town, so many people knew about him. However, there were only a dozen people who could talk to him. They were the owners and employees of the Italian restaurant, as well as the owners and employees of several supermarkets. That was all. So after he joined the crowd, although people didn't say anything, they didn't communicate with him. The people in the United States were actually not as lively as imagined. If you were a tourist or filming something, they would come over enthusiastically and share their joy with you. But for familiar strangers like Jiang Hai, they would still keep a distance, but Jiang Hai didn't care about this. He just moved from time to time in the crowd, but it didn't take long for him to be squeezed from the front to the middle of the parade. As soon as he reached the middle, he met an acquaintance, the mayor of Winthrop Town, Mayor Wallace, who has met Jiang Hai a few times. Hey, Jiang Hai, you also participated in the parade. Seeing Jiang Hai, Mayor Wallace, who was holding a water tank at this time, said with a smile. Hey, Mr. Mayor, I caught a mountain lion last night and sent it to the town. I just saw you marching here, so I came to join in the fun. Hearing the voice of Mayor Wallace, Jiang Hai also leaned over and explained the reason for his appearance here. Oh, I heard about this from others. You are really amazing, you can catch a mountain lion alive. You know, that is our top predator here. Hearing what Jiang Hai said, Mayor Wallace also nodded. He also heard about it in the morning. Mayor, what are you holding? Do you want me to help you? Hearing Mayor Wallace's words, Jiang Hai was a little embarrassed. After all, he couldn't explain the specific situation of the mountain lion he caught, so he wisely changed the topic. Looking at the big fish tank in Mayor Wallace's arms, Jiang Hai asked with some surprise. Hey, no, this fish tank can't be easily held by others. Only I, the mayor, can hold it. This is a gift for the sea god. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Mayor Wallace said with a smile. A gift for the sea god? Hearing Mayor Wallace's words, Jiang Hai looked inside with some surprise. Because he remembered that Robbins and the others said that the gifts for the sea god were some meat and the like. What does this fish tank mean? With a curious mind, Jiang Hai stretched his head forward, and Mayor Wallace also cooperated with him to move forward, so that he could see more clearly. Chapter 271. Don't say, the distance was too far, the aquarium tank was transparent, and Mayor Wallace was wearing blue clothes today, so Jiang Hai couldn't see it clearly. Now that he was closer, Jiang Hai discovered that there was something in the aquarium tank. This thing is mainly blue in color. It is only about 3 or 4 centimeters long, and there are white lines on its body. It looked like a blue and white stripe with 6 huge flower beds growing on its body. It looked really beautiful and mysterious. Subconsciously, Jiang Hai stretched out his hand and wanted to touch this thing. However, Jiang Hai's hand just stretched out, and he was stopped by Mayor Wallace. Sorry, I really haven't seen this little thing. It looks really beautiful. If you don't look carefully, you will really ignore this little thing, but this thing looks really good. It's not that I don't want you to touch it, but this thing is highly poisonous. They eat jellyfish as food, and there are many kinds of jellyfish toxins in their body. If you are poisoned by it, it is almost impossible to live because no one knows what kind of poison you are poisoned with. Looking at Jiang Hai, Mayor Wallace said seriously. He remembered that Jiang Hai has a fishing ground. This kind of dangerous creature, although rare in the United States coastal area, occasionally occurs. If you are stung, it will be troublesome. So powerful, what is this thing? A sea slug? When he heard Mayor Wallace's words, Jiang Hai was also shocked and withdrew his hand. It seems that the law of nature is really like that. Those who are good-looking are not to be trifled with. It is a kind of sea slug. This thing is called the blue dragon, also known as the sea swallow. Its scientific name is the Atlantic sea god slug. Hearing that Jiang Hai was quite interested in this thing, Mayor Wallace said to Jiang Hai while walking. The origin of this creature's name is the name of the sea god Glaucos in ancient Greek mythology. Did someone say that the god of the sea in Greek mythology was not Poseidon? However, Poseidon was the emperor of the sea, while Glaucus was just a sea god. There was a difference in their levels. According to legend, Glaucus was originally an ordinary fisherman. But one day, he found a kind of herb that could bring the dead back to life. Then, his spirit of seeking death was vaguely activated. After eating this herb, he turned into a merman, half human and half fish. He was divided into 3 forms. The left side was a human, and the right side was a fish. Above him was the lower half of a human, below him was the lower half of a fish, and above him was the human head, and below him was the fish head. I digressed. In the end, he wasn't really a good story. The main myths and stories about him were his love triangle with Skylar the water fairy and Kerch the witch. However, in 1777, when European scientists discovered the Poseidon slug for the first time, they borrowed his name, Poseidon. Over the years, this kind of slug was found in many places, including Africa, Europe, Australia, and Mozambique. There were traces of this kind of slug, not only in the Atlantic Ocean, but also in the Pacific Ocean. However, people were used to calling it Poseidon in the Atlantic Ocean. Because this kind of creature could *ck itself, mate, and reproduce, the population was not small. Therefore, even though this kind of creature was very poisonous, many people were willing to keep it as pets because of its beautiful appearance. Of course, Winthrop Town didn't have so much money. Although Jiang Hai felt that this thing was quite beautiful, to be honest, he still preferred beasts. Therefore, he was just asking for fun. If he went to the sea in the future, he would avoid this thing when he saw it. He couldn't afford to provoke it. When Mayor Wallace explained the origin of this blue dragon, they had unknowingly walked from the town to the beach. At this time, a lot of people had gathered on the beach, including Luo Binsi who drove here. In addition, there were many people gathered here. On the beach, there were a lot of small tents and tents. There were a lot of old goods inside. These were the things that would be used for trading in a while. Jiang Hai also glanced at them when he left. Most of them were abandoned appliances and the like. In the US, it was very troublesome to deal with old home appliances. You can't just throw them away. Every old home appliance had to be dismantled and sent to the processing plant. Some of them had to be recycled, and they even had to pay for it. This was very difficult for the lazy Americans to accept, but the punishment here was too heavy. If you were found to be littering, not only would you have to pay less, you might even go to jail. Therefore, in the United States, there were always a lot of old goods. Some people wouldn't throw away the old things after they replaced them with new ones. Because it was troublesome, most of them would be piled up at the door or in the warehouse. If a homeless person took a fancy to it, they could directly take it away. If it was newer, at least some old goods with some value would be sent to this kind of old goods market. Jiang Hai glanced around. There were a lot of things here. There were old appliances, refrigerators, televisions, washing machines, air conditioners, water heaters, and so on. There were old game consoles and all kinds of things. There were PS, PDAs, Xbox, and even the legendary Hongbai. There were old clothes, down jackets, even fur coats, some cloth, small ornaments, old books, old cups, old computers, and so on. It was almost like a department store. As long as you wanted to buy something, you could find it here. However, the premise was that these things were worthless and shabby. While Jiang Hai was looking here, Mayor Wallace had already walked to the front of the stage. After reciting a verse loudly, he poured the fish tank in his hand into the sea. The blue dragon that was caught also swam into the sea. With the cheers of the crowd, the ceremony was over. What was left was time to exchange information. Jiang Hai also told Rabinsi at the first time and plunged into the old goods market. However, Jiang Hai wouldn't let his stomach suffer. Before visiting this old goods market, he specially bought a taco. He ate it while walking and looking at the various things around him. For Jiang Hai, he actually didn't lack anything. Although Moses Adams was recently filing taxes for Jiang Hai, he didn't have any income since he took over the fishery last October. He only paid. If he didn't pay, it meant that the national and state taxes didn't exist. After all, taxes could only be deducted if there was income. If there was no income, then there was no tax to be deducted. Jiang Hai's gold coins were privately traded and were not included in the tax. Of course, if he took the initiative to report it, then the American government would be very happy. However, if the American government was happy, then the British government might have problems. After all, the gold coins that Jiang Hai salvaged were British gold coins, so there were many things in between. Jiang Hai wasn't stupid. He didn't have to pay taxes. He didn't have to pay sales tax or income tax. The only thing he had to pay was the local tax. However, because he took over in October, he only had to pay for half a year. Also, because Jiang Hai raised cattle, which was considered to stimulate local development, this tax would be reduced a little. Jiang Hai hired more than 20 people. More than 10 of them were locals, so the local tax would be discounted. In addition, he hired 9 special people, so the tax would be reduced a little more. Altogether, according to the calculations of the accountant that Moses Adams found, Jiang Hai only had to pay $1,723,446.7 this year. Moreover, after the tax filing, he would return $50 to Jiang Hai to buy pasture and fish food. Although $1 million wasn't a small amount, it wasn't much compared to the $4 million that Jiang Hai had calculated back then. So, after paying this amount, Jiang Hai still had a lot of money left. It was enough for him to buy whatever he wanted. At this moment, he was wandering around just to see if there was anything interesting. However, after looking around, Jiang Hai wasn't interested in many things. He wasn't interested in old home appliances, game consoles, electric motors, fishing nets, clothes, and the like. What he was really interested in were some handicrafts and books. The so-called handicrafts were mainly wood carvings. These things were said to have been carved by the Native Americans. In fact, Jiang Hai had seen the Iroquois carving them. After they were passed down, they were indeed fun to collect. Jiang Hai picked some good-looking ones, such as carved eagles, deer, mountain lions, and so on. He bought more than 10 carvings in total. These things could be put in his house. When he looked at them normally, they would give off a very stylish feeling. Just as Jiang Hai put away these wood carvings and was about to leave, he suddenly heard a shout. A treasure map. Come and look at a treasure map. A treasure map left behind by real pirates. Looking in the direction of the voice, Jiang Hai saw that the person hawking there was a big man. This big man looked to be more than 2 meters tall and had a big beard. At this moment, he was waving a piece of cloth made of cowhide. Jiang Hai had seen this guy before. He was also a fisherman. When he went to sell fish, Jiang Hai had met him a few times, but they hadn't communicated. Hearing his words now, Jiang Hai was a little surprised. In fact, ever since he got those gold coins last time, Jiang Hai had been a little interested in these treasures. However, he wasn't sure where the ships were. The sea was huge, and it wasn't easy to find them. Secondly, Jiang Hai felt that he didn't have the ability to protect himself in the sea. If he encountered a sea monster or something like that, he would be done for. However, being afraid didn't mean that he wasn't interested. Now that he heard that there was a treasure map, Jiang Hai slowly came over. When he saw Jiang Hai coming over, the big man couldn't help but stop hawking and look at Jiang Hai with a smile. Chapter 272. Hey, Jiang, how is it? My lucky manor lord, are you interested in my treasure map? Seeing Jiang Hai squatting down and looking around casually, the big man couldn't help but smile and squat down with a proud face. I'm a little interested. Are all the treasure maps you have here real? Jiang Hai casually flipped through the sea map in front of him. After all, he also has a fish farm, so he also has some understanding of sea maps. Although he is not as good as a real navigator and a captain, at least he can still understand sea maps. Of course, you can insult my things as fake, but you can't insult a great Viking pirate's things as fake. These things were all brought by my great-grandfather from Northern Europe. Not only are there sea maps near the Caribbean Sea and shipwreck routes, but there are also maps of the Atlantic Ocean and Europe. They are absolutely authentic. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the big man here said with some unwillingness. That's enough. The only one with Viking blood here is Edward Anderson. He is now employed by the young man in front of you. If old man Anderson knows that you dare to bluff his boss, be careful that he will stuff your head into your X-hole. Just as the big man in front of him was talking, a man sitting next to him couldn't help but laugh and say. Jiang Hai also has some impression of this man. He is also a person who often mingles in the fish market. He used to be together with this man, so he should also be a resident of Winthrop. At this time, he is also selling things there, basically some small appliances and books. Hey, Soren, if you didn't ruin my show, I would have invited you for a drink in the evening, but now, the wine is gone. Hearing Soren's words, the man who was still selling Jiang Hai's sea map said helplessly. Don't, Jiang, to be honest, this guy's family is indeed from Europe. His sea maps are also real, but unfortunately, someone bought them before. The sea maps are real, but they couldn't be salvaged, so, if you just buy a sea map as an ornament, it's a good choice. As soon as he heard about wine, the man immediately changed his attitude. For a fisherman and a sailor, the most attractive thing is naturally women, and in addition to women, the only thing that can't be missing on the sea is wine, because looking at the same scenery every day will really drive people crazy. Sometimes, getting drunk was the happiest thing in the world. Therefore, fishermen, to some extent, are 90% alcoholics. As soon as this guy said it, Soren's alcohol bug came out. Although he is still very afraid of Edward Anderson, the descendant of a former pirate, it is said that he killed killer whales and trained frogmen of the United States, but compared to a good glass of wine, these are nothing. Why are the sea maps real, but they can't be salvaged? Hearing this man's words, Jiang Hai was also stunned. Originally, he wanted to leave. Since these sea maps were not real, they were meaningless to him. But when he heard this man's words, Jiang Hai, who was about to leave, stopped temporarily. But this time, before the two men finished speaking, a voice suddenly came from behind Jiang Hai, because it's too deep. Jiang Hai looked back and unexpectedly found an acquaintance, Bob George, the owner of the horse farm when Jiang Hai bought the horse. Compared with this old gentleman, Jiang Hai was more familiar with his daughter, Delia, who was following behind him. Hello, Jiang, I heard that you recently made a lot of money at the New York Beef Show. Seeing Jiang Hai turn his head, Bob George came forward and hugged Jiang Hai and said with a smile. Compared with the last time, this time he was obviously more enthusiastic than the last time. After all, no one would refuse a billionaire, and a billionaire who has proven his friendship. Since there is this relationship, he naturally has to seize it. "Hello, Mr. George, how have you been?" Hearing his words, Jiang Hai also smiled and said to him. "Huh, still the same." Seeing that Jiang Hai still remembered him, Bob George also said with a smile. And behind him, Delia was also looking at Jiang Hai curiously. In fact, to be honest, Delia didn't have a good or bad impression of Jiang Hai. From the beginning, she met Jiang Hai, she was more curious about Asians. But later, when she learned that he had good ball skills, she also wanted to contact him, but she called Jiang Hai. But Jiang Hai never called or sent a text message, so the little girl quickly forgot about Jiang Hai. This year, she was about to enter college. Although the college entrance examination in the United States was not as difficult as the one in China, she still had to take the exam. She didn't consider the school's recommendation because she was not a good person when she was in school. Although she didn't change boyfriends more frequently than she changed clothes, as the captain of the cheerleading team, she naturally changed boyfriends several times, and her reputation in school was naturally not very good. And for the formal exam, she felt that if she took the dance exam, she might get a good score, but if she took the cultural exam, she had the urge to die. She definitely couldn't go to college, community college was more likely, so she was going to find a job in advance. Going home to help her father take care of the horse farm was not what she wanted. Now, if she could get in touch with the billionaire Jiang Hai, it might be an opportunity. At this time, looking at the enthusiastic look of Jiang Hai and her father, she pretended to be a lady behind their backs. "You just said that his sea maps are real, but they can't be fished out because it's too deep?" No matter what Delia thought at this time, Jiang Hai had finished exchanging pleasantries with her father. In fact, the two were not very familiar with each other, so the so-called exchanging pleasantries was just a few words. Compared to chatting with the old man, Jiang Hai wanted to know the story of these sea maps more. Hearing Jiang Hai ask about this, Bob George couldn't help but smile and say, "This guy's grandfather was the first European to come to the American continent, and he is indeed the descendant of a pirate. You know what happened to June Flower? His grandfather was indeed sent here because of pirates. The sea maps he brought are 90% real, and until his father's generation, he used these sea maps to make a fortune." In fact, this matter was not a secret in Winthrop, and many people knew about it. The man's father had once used these charts to exchange for a certain amount of money with some high-ranking officials and nobles. There were indeed some very valuable sunken ships in these charts, which had brought his father a lot of money. But unfortunately, his father was a drunkard and gambler, and later got addicted to drugs, and the money he exchanged for was all used up. In the end, when the man was 12 years old, he died in a car accident, and his father only left behind these sunken ships that were confirmed to be unsalvageable after being sold, because these sunken ships were really too deep. Using some submarines to explore, these sunken ships were basically about 8,000 meters below sea level, and even more than 10,000 meters below sea level. With the current level of the world, it was very troublesome to fish up a ship of about 5,000 meters. For example, the United Kingdom, with the whole country's strength, at most, they could only fish up a ship of 4.8 kilometers, which is about 4,800 meters deep. 8,000 meters was really something that could be fished up, and it would not cost as much money. After all, not all sunken ships were called South China Sea No. 1, even if these ships were pirate ships. But not all pirate ships were rich. Pirates also needed to fight. Even if there were some valuable things on the main ship, secondary ship, and so on, it would be enough to salvage them, but this money was clearly not enough to salvage them. Hearing Bob George's words, the big man opposite him smiled a little awkwardly. It was true, and he had nothing to refute, but his words made Jiang Hai feel a little moved. Others could not enter the deep sea because of the water pressure, but he did not care. He was not afraid of water pressure, and he did not need to breathe, so he did not care about going into the water. The only thing he needed to worry about was his safety. But even if he could not use it now, it did not mean that he could not use it in the future. After hesitating for a moment, Jiang Hai suddenly turned his head and said to the man, "I want one of each of your sea maps." one of each? What do you want these things for? Even if you want to collect them, you should want some authentic ones. These are clearly printed. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Bob George was a little confused. He had said everything he wanted to say. Did he think he was lying to him? Otherwise, why would there be such a big reaction? One of each? Oh, I just feel that if I put these sea maps on my ship, then take some photos and send them back to China, it would be very interesting. Name a price, one of each of these, how much? Hearing Bob George's words, Jiang Hai smiled and said indifferently. He did not need these maps, but the treasures sleeping in the sea were very useful. Well, the hobbies of rich people are always different from ours. If you have time, remember to come to my horse farm. I recently got a lot of good horses. Seeing that Jiang Hai did not listen to him, Bob George felt offended, so he did not say much. After saying a few words to Jiang Hai politely, he left with his daughter. At this time, Jiang Hai did not have the leisure to care what the old man was thinking. He was still looking at the man in front of him. One of each, how much? Taking out his wallet, Jiang Hai looked at him with a serious face and said word by word. Hey, brother, 17 sea maps, 1 franklin, all yours. Hearing Jiang Hai say it again, the man reacted and immediately picked up one of each from the stall, then handed it to Jiang Hai and said excitedly. Jiang Hai did not refuse. He took the 17 sea maps in his hand and gave him $100 each. Jiang Hai took these things back to Robbins. Now he could not wait to study these sea maps. Chapter 273. Hey, boss, what did you buy? Back in the parking lot, Jiang Hai saw Robbins Garcia smoking a cigarette from a distance. When he saw Jiang Hai coming over, Robbins Garcia stood up and said with a smile. 9 out of 10 American cowboys were heavy smokers. They were different from seafarers. Seafarers were very bored except for fishing and dealing with stormy weather, so they all liked to drink, especially hard liquor that could get them drunk. But cowboys were different. They couldn't drink too much because they had to let the cows out to graze on time every morning, clean the cowshed, and watch the cows, so although they were willing to drink, they were more willing to drink beer that was hard to get drunk. Compared to the boredom of seafarers, they were also bored when they were herding cows, but their eyes couldn't leave the cows, so most cowboys liked to smoke, but they didn't smoke cigarettes with filters. Because of this, it was very troublesome to throw a cigarette butt. Naturally, it was not allowed to throw a cigarette butt in the pasture. A small breeze would turn this cigarette butt into a time bomb. Therefore, these cowboys prefer to smoke pipes. Don't think that tobacco is cheap. In fact, the tobacco in the pipe is not as expensive as the box of cigarettes sold outside. Especially Robbins and the others, Jiang Hai gives them the highest salary among the cowboys. So the tobacco they bought was also quite good. After smoking, they poured the remaining ash in the pipe into a leather bag they carried with them, so that they could clean it up. Look, I got some sea maps. Hearing Robbins Garcia's words, Jiang Hai raised the stack of papers in his hand. Oh, damn Walter, you dare to cheat my boss. Let's go, boss, I'll get justice for you. When he heard Jiang Hai's words, Robbins Garcia couldn't help but frown. Just like Bob George, Robbins Garcia was also an old man in this town. Naturally, he had some understanding of the guy who sold the sea maps. If he was just deceiving a foreigner, probably no one would care. However, he was deceiving his boss. That was unacceptable. I know that these ships can't be salvaged because they're too deep. Someone has already told me that. I'm just going to buy these sea charts and take some photos in my ship. Don't be so angry. As soon as he heard that Luo Binsi was going to find that person, Jiang Hai immediately stopped him and said with a smile. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Luo Binsi frowned but didn't say anything. Since Jiang Hai and that guy were willing to fight, he couldn't say anything and could only nod helplessly. After that, the two of them got into the car and headed towards Jiang Hai's manor. On the way back, Jiang Hai kept looking at his sea map. These 17 sea maps were all distributed in the Atlantic Ocean. 3 of the sea maps were in the North Pole, 6 in Europe, 3 in the Gulf of Mexico, and 5 in the Caribbean Sea. Jiang Hai wouldn't go to the North Pole for the time being. First, it was too far. Second, it was too cold. He didn't have the equipment to sail in the North Pole. Jiang Hai didn't want to go to Europe. After all, there were too many things to do in Europe. Especially in these sea maps, the original owner of the sunken ship may have some trouble. Because in the special era of the Middle Ages, pirates were actually more of a country's naval forces. These pirates had official backing. They robbed the ships of all countries, but secretly, they could pay some tribute to other countries to get protection. For example, the famous British started as a pirate. After all, before the British, the real dominators of the sea were Spain, the Netherlands, and other countries. The empire where the sun never sets slowly rose under such a situation. Spain and other countries were famous for being shameless. Generally, as long as the ship was related to these countries, they wouldn't let it go. Even if Jiang Hai didn't salvage the ship, it would be troublesome if these countries found out about it when he was selling it. Then, only the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean Sea were left. Looking at these sea maps, Jiang Hai's mouth unconsciously cracked open. He now had the idea of going there to play. It was just a matter of time. After all, he had money now, and he didn't have anything to do recently. It was good to go out to play. He had to admit that sometimes Jiang Hai was an impulsive person. Once he thought of something, he wanted to do it. Now that he wanted to go to the tropics to search for treasures, his heart was beating fast. He was really a little excited. However, he knew that it wouldn't be easy to go there. First of all, if he was alone, he wouldn't even be able to sail his boat. Therefore, he needed some sailors who knew how to talk. Secondly, there was the issue of safety along the way. After all, this was considered a circle along the east coast. He had to be careful. Just as Jiang Hai was thinking about it, the car had returned to Jiang Hai's manor. After entering the gate, Jiang Hai's car stopped in front of the villa. As soon as he got out of the car, Little Huang and Xiao Bai, who were playing outside the villa, ran over. Maybe they heard the dog barking. Delina and Marian also came out of their house. After patting the dog's head, Jiang Hai walked into the villa first. He looked around and found that Qi Li and the others weren't there. Where are they? Did they leave? Looking at Delina and Marian behind him, Jiang Hai asked curiously. Pra Walton went to the winery, and Selena Gomez went to the beach. As for Keely, who claimed to be your wife, she went to the cowshed. Jiang, is that woman really your wife? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Delina looked at Jiang Hai with her big eyes full of curiosity. Well, yes, but we don't have any feelings for each other. Anyway, I'll tell you about it. Hearing Delina's question, Jiang Hai also felt that his daughter should have the right to know about his marriage situation, so he sat on the sofa. Delina and Marian sat on the left and right of Jiang Hai, listening to Jiang Hai's story. At this time, the 4 women were having a lot of fun. Yesterday, Aphrodite and the others played all day, so they naturally had to work today to take care of the grapevines. After learning about this matter, Pra Walton, who was originally staring at Selena Gomez, took the initiative to go to the winery and work with these beauties there. Of course, rather than saying that she was working, it was better to say that she was a hindrance, even though Pra Walton was a real rich man. She didn't drink red wine unless it was the best. She also had some understanding of how red wine was brewed. However, she didn't know much about taking care of the grapevines. Although Aphrodite and the others were a little annoyed with her, they couldn't speak and could only endure it. Fortunately, it was all within their tolerable range. As for Selena Gomez, who had finally gotten rid of Pra Walton, she went to the beach alone. Although she had only been here for a day yesterday, to be honest, she already liked Jiang Hai's beach. The gentle breeze was really comfortable, and the quality of the sand was also excellent. Especially when swimming, she could see colorful corals when snorkeling. The natural environment was very well protected, and it wasn't just the natural environment. Jianghai's beach even had Wi-Fi, which made her very happy. Here, she enjoyed the sea breeze, drank drinks, and played games. When she was tired, she would go to the sea to see the fish. When she was hungry, she would ride the four-wheeled motorcycle back to the villa to rest and eat. This kind of life was too beautiful. As for Qi Li and her little assistant, they were near the cowshed, listening to Big Mouth Philip introduce Jianghai's cowshed. Philip didn't know the relationship between Qi Li and Jianghai, so he thought this woman was a person who came to buy cows. Naturally, he praised the cows he raised endlessly. Of course, what he said was also the truth. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that Jianghai's cows were the best in the world. Except for the fact that they weren't well known, they beat all of their kind in seconds. Since they woke up in the morning and had breakfast, Qi Li and her assistant had been staying here. Although in the beginning, because of the smell, they almost fainted from the stench, but after going to the wind and adapting to it, they felt that it was acceptable. This was Jianghai's cows. If it were anyone else, they would have fainted long ago. I didn't expect Jianghai to be so extravagant. The value of this manor and this herd of cows is almost comparable to our company. After getting a general understanding of the situation, Qi Li and her assistant went to a small slope on the lawn to rest. In front of them were Jianghai's more than 10,000 cows. Looking at the cows eating the grass was really spectacular. At this time, the assistant said to Qi Li with some lingering fear in her heart. Originally, this little assistant really looked down on Jianghai and thought that Jianghai wasn't worthy of their President Qi. But in the past 6 months, a lot of things really happened. The person she looked down on the most in the past seemed to have become someone she needed to look up to in an instant. Yes, the total value of these cows is about 3 billion. If Jianghai sells all the cows, the money he earns should be higher than the total output of our company. And don't forget, it's only been 6 months. Jianghai can't raise any more cows in the future. 1 wave of 3 billion, 10 waves of 30 billion, 1 wave of 300 billion. TSK, this is really a place that can lay golden eggs. Looking at the grassland in front of her, Qi Li's eyes were like candles. I really didn't know that our son-in-law had such ability before. The assistant said helplessly. Yes, this Jianghai, I can't see through him more and more. I'm now interested in him as a person and his cows. Chapter 274. Qi Group is not considered a large conglomerate in China. After all, many companies are moving towards China, and there are lots of companies with high market values in China. Look at the Forbes list. All the banks in China are listed at the top of the list. Apart from these public companies, let's just talk about Tencent, Alibaba, Chanda, and so on. Their market value was easily tens of billions of dollars, and the founders who owned a lot of shares naturally had a high share of the shares. There was no telling how much they made every year, but they were definitely worth at least $18 billion in US dollars. The Qi Group's main business projects in the country were real estate and technology projects. Real estate was the foundation of Qi Li's father's business. He was originally a businessman. Later, when he had some money, he started from real estate speculation. Then, he developed a residential area outside the third ring road of the capital. He used more than 10 years to turn from a contractor to a tycoon. Then, he raised funds, went public, and established the Qi Group. As for the technology projects, most of them are venture capital and angel funds. Of course, the returns are also good. After decades of development by Qi Li's father, Qi Group's market value is 17.2 billion renminbi when Qi Li's father was at his peak. The Qi family owns 47.3% of the shares, and it is not an exaggeration to say that Qi Group is a family business. But after Qi Li's father died, the shares dropped to 8.1 billion renminbi, and more than half of the company's assets disappeared. In the past year, with Qi Li's help, Qi Group's assets returned to 16.2 billion renminbi. Although it is still far from its peak, it is not considered a first-tier conglomerate in Bing City, let alone in Beijing. After all, doing business is like sailing against the current. If you do not move forward, you will fall behind. In fact, Qi Li did not tell Jiang Hai that the real estate business in China is not doing well. The prices of the houses in the city have not dropped, and there is no need to worry about selling them. But it is very difficult to develop them. If the houses are too far away from the city, there will be no profits even if they develop them. This is because the houses are not selling well now. So now, Qi Li was forced to change her style. In the past year, she had put more energy into business and technology investments. The returns were quite good. Now, Qi Enterprise was mainly relying on these things to advance. But these things were not real. Technology was like virtual currency. No matter how high it was, if it burst one day, it would be over. Qi Li, who had lived in the US for a period of time, was very clear about the networking and IT businesses. These businesses could make money quickly but go bankrupt even faster. For example, there was a factory in the United States that specialized in producing mobile phone screens. Later, they signed a supply contract with Apple. Instantly, the company's stock price rose from a few dollars to dozens of dollars. At its peak, it even rose to hundreds of dollars. This company instantly entered the eyes of the public. However, before this company could make money, the company had already started to make money. Apple's new products did not use the screens produced by this company. Then, this company went bankrupt immediately. So, Qi Li was very clear about these things. Investing money in these things will bring a lot of returns. But if it is not done well, it is easy to fail miserably. This is something she absolutely does not want to see. Compared to these superficial things, she valued the business more. In other words, if there is something in the business, it will make people feel more assured. Among all the businesses, the easiest way to make money was selling clothes. But Qi Enterprise will not deal with ordinary small brands. As for the big brands, they have their own fashion stores and do not need Qi Enterprise to act as their agent. Clothes are not available. Recently, the country is changing the price of housing, and they can't do well. Even if they want to act as an agent for cars, they do not have the ability to do so. Then, only food is left. It is said that food is the most important thing for people. Before coming to Jiang Hai's place, Qi Li had already considered whether she should get involved in the food and beverage industry. Because of the recent policies in the country, high-end hotels cannot sell alcohol and so on. However, there was still a market for some high-end Western restaurants, especially when ordinary people were earning more and more. A stylish restaurant is indeed a good place to make money. At the same time, Qi Enterprise is actually in the food and beverage industry. At the same time, she can make money and attack them at the same time to avenge her father. This is a good way to kill two birds with one stone. However, the catering business was not something that could be done as and when it came to official matters, it was easy for them to settle it. The Qi family had been in Beijing for so many years and could be considered to have deep roots. It was also easy for them to solve the problem of the shops. After all, their company had a lot of shops in their hands. But it is a little troublesome to find the origin of the raw materials. It is very difficult to sell domestic products at a high price now. And the foreign products are basically divided up by the big food and beverage companies. It is not so easy to find new ones now. So before coming out this time, Qi Li has also been thinking about this problem, but there is no solution. She came to Jiang Hai's place purely to relieve her boredom. At the same time, she made a deal with Jiang Hai and told him about her and Jiang Hai. But she accidentally found that Jiang Hai's beef is the best in the world. Originally, she just wanted to help Jiang Hai and help him get more money from Prawalton. That is why she came to learn about Jiang Hai's beef. This is also a kind of goodwill to him. After all, Jiang Hai's beef is raised in the East Coast. It is a little troublesome to transport it back. But as she got to know more, she found that Jiang Hai's beef is indeed the best. And Jiang Hai is also raising fish, not only cod, but also other fish, even salmon and lobsters. If these fish are transported back to the country, her restaurant will be very successful. Then, she estimated that her restaurant would definitely be able to make a name for itself. That was what she was most excited about. But when she thought about the price of Jiang Hai's beef, she can't help but hesitate. It is too expensive. If the shipping cost was included, a pound of steak would cost almost 3,000 renminbi. Adding the cost of water, electricity, taxes, labor, and so on, she would not even be able to recoup the cost of a half-pound steak if she did not sell it for more than 2,000 renminbi. But 2,000 yuan for a steak, although the taste is guaranteed, how many people are willing to spend this money to eat it? This is also the most troublesome thing for her now, but she is really reluctant to give up. And most importantly, Jiang Hai doesn't kill the cows. There are only about 12,000 bulls. Now that 2,000 bulls have been sold, there are still 10,000 bulls. If she doesn't want them, then she can be sure that Walton will not give up these bulls. If she wants them again, she will have to wait another year. I have a headache. Rubbing her temples, Qi Li murmured in a low voice. The assistant who has been sitting next to her naturally knows what project her boss is following up on recently. In fact, in her opinion, Jiang Hai's food is really delicious. She has been traveling extensively with Qi Li in China. It can be said that she had seen and eaten all kinds of delicacies, but when she came to Jiang Hai's side, she suddenly found that the things she used to think were delicious tasted wrong. Not to mention the steak, after all, it was the steak that the young master of Walmart had taken a fancy to. Just the fish, lobster, and abalones have a taste that she has never eaten before. The fresh and sweet taste of the deep sea and cold water really made her a little overwhelmed. It is really delicious. If she can feel this way, then the foodies in China will not be bad. It can be said that as long as these things are sent back to China, it will be no problem to sell them at a high price. However, she also knows what Qi Li is worried about. The transportation is too expensive, too far, and too high. It is really a bit speechless. They sat on the lawn for the whole afternoon. When the sun set in the west and Philemon and Belle were about to go back with their cattle, the two women came back to their senses. I have decided, I want to give it a try. Looking at the blue sky in the distance, Qi Li seemed to be talking to her assistant beside her, but also seemed to be talking to herself. She nodded with a serious face. Her voice was not loud, but it was unusually steady. But the price. Hearing Qi Li say that she wants to give it a try, the assistant is a little worried. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. If we let go of this opportunity, then we can only wait for next year. If Jiang Hai's beef is made famous by Walmart, even if there is some affection between Jiang Hai and me, it will not be easy to get a certain share. The most important thing is that when the time comes, we will not be the only family to sell this kind of beef in the country. Standing up, Qi Li casually patted the grass and leaves on her butt, and her eyes flashed with a trace of firmness. President Qi, as long as it is your decision, I will faithfully carry it out. Seeing that Qi Li has made up her mind, the assistant naturally knew that this is the time to show her determination, so she stood up and said with a serious face. Then the two returned to Jiang Hai's villa. When they returned to the villa, they found that Walton and Selena Gomez had already returned. Of course, the most important thing was Jiang Hai, and Jiang Hai had already prepared dinner. In Jiang Hai's manner, there was never a shortage of delicious food. Tonight, he made dinner. Steak was naturally the main dish. In addition to steak, there was also a pot of beef stew. Seafood was naturally indispensable. 10 fried cod sticks, a large bowl of cheddar soup, Arctic sweet shrimp, braised abalone. Although there was no lobster from yesterday, because Jiang Hai did not have time to catch it today, these dishes were naturally very sumptuous. On the other side, Qi Li's assistant, after sitting at the table, did not stop using her mobile phone. It seemed that she was also showing off in her circle of friends. However, in addition to her, it seemed that the atmosphere at the dinner table today was even more strange. Chapter 275. Jiang Hai, I have something to tell you. After a dull dinner, Pra Walton didn't mention the beef to Jiang Hai today, and Jiang Hai didn't take the initiative to talk about it. But after Pra Walton left, Jiang Hai was preparing to clean up the remaining plates and bowls when Qi Li walked into the kitchen and looked at Jiang Hai and said, "What's the matter?" While cleaning up the remaining dishes, Jiang Hai asked Qi Li, "Can you leave some of your beef for me?" Looking at Jiang Hai, Qi Li said with some embarrassment. Last night, she was still bargaining with Jiang Hai, but she didn't expect that one day later, she changed her mind. She changed from a person who wanted to make money for Jiang Hai to a person who wants to make money for Jiang Hai. The change is really big. Okay, you can take as much as you want, but how much can you eat? Is it for your mother? I remember that the beef I gave your mother last time was the best. Hearing Qi Li's words, Jiang Hai thought she was embarrassed to take some back. Although he and Qi Li have a relationship, Jiang Hai is not so stingy that he can't even bear to part with some beef, so he said without raising his head. "No, not a small amount, and not for me to eat. You also know that our Qi group is mainly in the real estate business, but recently, the domestic real estate business has not been good, so we changed our business to investing in the electronics industry. But this thing is not a real business after all. There are too many bubbles in it, and I am a little worried. So I recently had an idea, and that is to invest in the restaurant industry." Looking at Jiang Hai, Qi Li began to talk. She is indeed a good businessman, and can also be said to be a good politician. When she began to talk, her endless enthusiasm was indeed like a female robber. The trace of hesitation just now has completely disappeared at this time, and she began to talk to Jiang Hai about her philosophy. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai's hands, which were originally busy, stopped and looked at her with some surprise. "You mean, you want to buy beef from me?" To be honest, I don't think your choice is right. After all, the price of my beef is a little, oh no, it is very high, and it is really difficult for ordinary people to accept." Looking at Qi Li in front of him, Jiang Hai hesitated for a moment and said softly, "Business is business. Feelings are feelings, and Jiang Hai and Qi Li don't have any feelings for each other. Originally, their identities were more like enemies. It was good enough that he didn't raise the price, and it was impossible for her to let him get a discount. Of course I know that. The price is not lower than yours. I bought it at the same price as Pratt Walton. You don't think that I spent so much effort to open a Western restaurant just to cater to the middle and low-end consumers, do you? My target has been the rich since the beginning. For the average consumer, 2,000 renminbi for a steak is hard to accept. But for the rich or those who like to show off, it's not particularly expensive." Looking at Jiang Hai, Qi Li also stared at him. From the beginning, the so-called pattern between the two was different. After all, Jiang Hai was just a loser in China. Although now he is abroad and has become a rich man, in fact, he is more like a loser. Some people say that a rich man can't be rich for more than 3 generations, because the people who are really rich for more than 3 generations are the family. Although Qi Li is not from a family and has not been rich for more than 3 generations, it doesn't prevent her from fixing her eyes on those families. Such a price, except for those families, only the nouveau riche who likes to pretend can accept it. Seeing Qi Li so serious, Jiang Hai didn't say anything and thought for a moment. "Since you have decided, I can give you a share of 1,000 head, but the transportation fee is not included in the meat. You need to rent a warehouse in Boston and find a way to get the meat back. It's up to you whether you want to go by air or by sea." Now he can still squeeze out 1,000 head of beef, and it doesn't matter if he gives it to Qi Li. After all, Pra Walton hasn't ordered how many head of beef she has. In fact, Jiang Hai understands why Pra Walton is so calm and not in a hurry. In fact, it is very simple. Jiang Hai's beef is too expensive. Now in the United States, there are only a few people who can afford to buy all his beef. And Jiang Hai just participated in the New York State Beef Cattle Show in the east of the United States, and his name hasn't become famous yet. There won't be a large number of suppliers, so she has a certain opportunity. She has been playing these 2 days and didn't talk to Jiang Hai about the price. It's not that she doesn't want to talk to him, but she is waiting for Jiang Hai to be unable to hold back. Although in terms of the final transaction price, she would definitely not let Jiang Hai suffer a loss, but cooperation was similar to talking about a partner. There is always one person who is strong, and the other person who is weak. Walton wants to be the strong one. Now Jiang Hai gave 1,000 head of beef to Chi, which is actually a hint to Walton that his beef can be sold. If you really don't talk about the price, then it will really have nothing to do with her 1,000 head of beef? That's great, but we may not be able to buy so many at once. Hearing Jiang Hai give her 1,000 head of beef so quickly, Chi, who has prepared a lot of excuses, is stunned first, and then she is ecstatic. Originally, she thought that it wouldn't be easy to get some beef from Jiang Hai's hands. But unexpectedly, Jiang Hai is more decisive than she thought. 1,000 head of beef is enough to deal with the Western restaurant she is going to open. If the quality of the beef is really the same as the beef she has eaten in the past 2 days, it will be difficult for her restaurant not to be popular. Seeing Chi agree, Jiang Hai also waved his hand. As long as the price is not a problem, it is not a problem, this is not a problem. Beef will not taste good after it is frozen. If you want to eat it, you have to eat it cold. The contract is for half a year. Within half a year, you can slaughter it many times, and you can decide the number of times. In the end, you will be done with 1,000 head of beef. For beef, many slaughterhouses slaughtered beef in batches and then froze it. However, although frozen beef wouldn't spoil, it definitely wouldn't taste as good as fresh beef. Really good beef was fresh and cold, just like some expensive fish. If it was fresh and cold, it wouldn't be a problem even if it was kept for 10 days or half a month. It will be the same as when it is alive, but if it is cold, it must be frozen immediately if it is not eaten, otherwise it will spoil. Jiang Hai's beef is the same. After killing the beef here, it must be immediately put on ice and then sent back to China. It will take 2 days to go back and forth, and it is just right to divide it into half a month to slaughter it. No problem, we can sign the contract. Seeing Jiang Hai agree, Chi Li's eyes lit up. After half a year of growth, the bulls in Jiang Hai's restaurant have basically grown to their largest state, which is 750 kilograms. According to the meat yield of 65%, it is nearly 1,000 kilograms. Out of the 1,000 kilograms, half a kilogram of steak can be made, which is only 2,000 yuan in total. Besides, in a restaurant, there is more than just steak. There are about 1,200 servings. If she opens a restaurant, she will open more than one. If all her restaurants in the food and beverage industry couldn't consume 5,000 pounds of beef a day, then there was no point in her opening a restaurant. Not to mention impacting the family's original market, even in the capital's food and beverage industry, it probably wouldn't make any waves. Hearing Chi Li's words, Jiang Hai thought for a while and nodded. Okay, it's a deal. To be honest, he didn't really want to sell the beef cattle to Chi Li. After all, 1,000 bulls is not a small amount. Jiang Hai's beef cattle can be sold for more than 100,000 yuan per head, and 1,000 of them will be more than 100 million yuan. If it was converted into RMB, it would be 700 to 800 million. This was a huge amount of pressure for Chi Li. However, Chi Li is obviously ready to deal with the pressure. After Jiang Hai agreed, she quickly went upstairs and contacted the people in her company to discuss the purchase of Jiang Hai's beef. First of all, they need a transport plane. They can't afford it, but they can rent it. Secondly, it is the problem of the price. However, it has nothing to do with Chi Li, and the professionals will discuss it. The next morning, Chi Li came to Jiang Hai with the contract she made overnight. Walton is the first one to be stunned. Just as Jiang Hai thought, Pra Walton came with the idea that the goods are there, but she didn't expect Qi Li to interfere. Jiang, this is different from the number you told me. How can you sell 1,000 bowls to her without permission? Looking at the contract Qi Li brought over, Pra Walton's face is gloomy. She has prepared the money this time. She was waiting for Jiang Hai to give up so that she can sign a contract with him. However, she didn't expect that someone would come out of nowhere. First of all, you're mistaken about one thing. This is my cow, not yours. Secondly, this is my thing. Naturally, I can sell it to whoever I want. You haven't said that you want it, and you haven't said that you don't want it. I can't possibly refuse someone who comes to me with real money just to wait for you. Jiang Hai glanced at Pra Walton casually and signed his name on the contract Qi Li brought over. Jiang Hai also showed this contract to Moses Adams, and the obligations of both parties are clearly stated in it. Seeing Jiang Hai give away 1,000 bowls just like that, Pra Walton is really anxious this time. Okay, 1,000 bowls it is. I'll take the rest. Pra Walton said word by word as she slammed her hands on the table in front of Jiang Hai. It is obvious that she is not in a good mood now. Don't you want to see the bowls? We haven't talked about the price yet. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai looked at her with some surprise. He really doesn't understand this woman. Pra Walton just smiled after hearing Jiang Hai's words. Does Jiang Hai really think that he is playing these days? Too naive. Chapter 276. Tut 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 tut. The sound of a motor could be heard in the waters of the Jiang Hai fishing ground. At this time, a boat was like an arrow that had been released from a bow, quickly cutting through the waves and advancing into the depths of the sea. At this moment, Jiang Hai was sitting in the pilot's seat. He wore a pair of sunglasses and looked into the distance while enjoying the sea breeze. At this moment, there were no humans by his side, only some animals. Boom boom, boom boom. Although it was not her first time out at sea, Xiaobai was still very afraid of the ocean. In fact, dogs were afraid of heights and water. Of course, dogs could swim, but that did not mean that they liked water. There were some dogs that liked water, but most of them were like Xiaobai. They didn't like water. That's enough, your voice is louder than the engine. Jiang Hai patted Little White's head and said with a smile. But sometimes, fear wasn't something that could be understood just by talking about it. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Xiaobai looked at Jiang Hai pitifully. It tried its best not to cry out, but it still stayed far away from the boat. If water splashed over, it would run away immediately. Looking at it, it continued to lie lazily in the distance. However, its raised eyes and ears meant that it didn't like water either. Unlike them, Dai Teeth and Qiuqiu seemed to like this place very much. Qiuqiu was currently standing at the bow of the ship, shedding its feathers. Although it was not as majestic as an adult bald eagle, it was somewhat similar. Occasionally, it would try to spread its wings, but its claws would not loosen no matter what. Jiang Hai was not worried about this. The bald-headed sea eagle's growth cycle was very long. Generally speaking, it would take 4 months for the hatchling to grow into a young bird. The young birds had to be taught for another 3 months before they could fly and leave Rome to live alone. Although Jiang Hai's Qiuqiu was about the same age, it was congenitally deficient when it was young. Although it had Jiang Hai's qi as its bones to make up for its injuries, it still couldn't fly yet. It needed to be trained slowly, but at this moment, it had shown its yearning for the sky, so Jiang Hai didn't have to worry about it. As for the other one that wasn't afraid of water, it was Bucktooth. This guy was currently sitting in front of the dashboard of Jiang Hai's cabin. He was watching Jiang Hai drive the ship while eating the grass that Daliana had given him before they set sail. He was very calm. Looking at the appearance of his pets, Jiang Hai couldn't help but smile. He had been busy these past few days. 10 days have passed since Qi Li and the others arrived. The first day was the day they arrived. The second day was the Poseidon ceremony. On the third day, after Jiang Hai and Qi Li signed a contract, Walton and Jiang Hai signed a contract on the fourth day. The price of the contract was also quite good. The price of the two was the same. Premium A-grade beef. If it was Japanese 5A grade beef, which accounted for more than half of the premium A-grade beef, the price would be $395 per pound. If it was less than half, the price would be $380 per pound. The price of the other beef was the same as Walton's original price. After signing the contract, the cattle raised in Jiang Hai's manor were basically sold out. The rest were cows and calves, but they weren't in a hurry to buy bulls. Now that the manor was equipped with people, these bulls were just right. They had to kill most of the bulls here and sell them all. Then, they would consider buying new bulls. Based on the fact that he had already signed the contract for half a year, he would be able to buy a new cow in October, just like last year. After signing the contract, Walton and Selena Gomez stayed here for 2 more days before leaving. Qi Li and her assistant also stayed here for 3 days before leaving. They had to go back and figure out how to distribute Jiang Hai's meat to the whole country, or to send it to Huaxia. It had to be admitted that these 2 strong women were very capable. Within 3 days after they left, everything was basically settled. Walton rented a warehouse in Boston and arranged for 3 planes to transport Jiang Hai's beef to all parts of the country every day. After Qi Li returned to China, she immediately held a board meeting and announced that she would enter the food and beverage industry. However, it was obvious that everyone was skeptical about the price of Jiang Hai's beef. According to this price, Jiang Hai would have to pay $120,000 for a cow. If it was converted to RMB, it would be $780,000. In China, a beef cow was only sold for several thousand yuan, and a dairy cow was only sold for 20 to 30,000 yuan. It was very difficult for them to accept that Jiang Hai's beef cow was sold for 780,000 yuan. Although they had eaten the steaks brought back by Qi Li, they all liked them. However, they were unwilling to spend money to cook such expensive steaks. Luckily, Qi Li didn't count on these people. Her family was rich, so she just came to tell them. Since they didn't agree, she didn't care. The next day, she directly established a subsidiary company of the food and beverage industry. It was 100% owned by the Qi family and had nothing to do with the Qi family. At the same time, they opened 3 stores in the capital and renovated them at the same time. They wanted to build the best chain of Western restaurants. Although they might not be as good as French restaurants, they had the best ingredients. While both sides were moving forward unsteadily, Jiang Hai was also doing his own thing, which was to file his taxes. After a few days of calculations by the accountant, Jiang Hai's taxes were finished. After all the money was deducted, Jiang Hai was finally relieved. Every year when it was time to file taxes, people in the United States felt that there was a sword of Damocles hanging over their heads. In the United States, tax evasion was definitely the most serious crime. Most importantly, the people in the United States almost always relied on you to voluntarily file your taxes. If your tax return was not correct, they would do something to you. Look at how many big shots, rich people, and important politicians in the United States were arrested. 9 out of 10 of the biggest crimes were related to tax issues. For the people in the United States, the Internal Revenue Service was much more terrifying than the FBI and the CIA. Jiang Hai hadn't immigrated to the United States yet, and he didn't have the intention to do so. However, after filing his taxes, he was relieved. After receiving the tax report and the bill of exchange, Jiang Hai's mood improved a lot. The money from selling the beef was counted as this year's income. Although he would have to pay a large sum of money next year, it was always good to make money. Therefore, he prepared to take his family out to sea to have fun. Unfortunately, Daliana and Marian were not willing to go. So in the end, Jiang Hai brought the 4 of them out to enjoy the sea breeze. It seemed like his mood was lifted a little. After sailing for a long time, Jiang Hai stopped the boat in the middle of the coral reef and the lesser land. He turned off the engine and let the current carry the boat back and forth on the sea. Jiang Hai didn't go fishing or diving. Instead, he took off his underwear and laid down on the boat. He called Little White and Little Yellow to his side. While basking in the sun and drinking cold beer, he rubbed the heads of the two guys with his hands. This kind of life was very comfortable. However, while Jiang Hai was enjoying the sun, Xiao Huang, who had been lying next to him, suddenly stood up. His pair of eyes stared at the sea behind him. Feeling Huang Jingjing's expression, Jiang Hai couldn't help but sit up and look behind him. Following his gaze, he saw a fluffy cylindrical thing slowly floating over from a distance. What is that? Trash? Looking at the thing swaying back and forth with the current, Jiang Hai muttered in a low voice. Taking off his sunglasses, Jiang Hai looked at the floating thing. As it floated closer and closer, Jiang Hai also saw the appearance of this thing. Indeed, this thing is a fluffy cylindrical creature. Its head is white, but its body is black. At this time, this little guy seems to be sleeping. Its eyes are closed, swaying on the sea. He has to admit that it's really cute. Jiang Hai heard about this creature many times, but it's the first time he saw it. It's a sea otter. Looking at the little guy floating closer and closer to the boat, Jiang Hai couldn't help but stand up and slowly move closer. Although he has always heard of sea otters, this is the first time Jiang Hai has seen one. In fact, sea otters are the same as walruses and sea lions. They belong to the marine mammals. Although they have claws that allow them to live on land, they don't. However, they seem to have retired the ability to live on land. Instead, they are very powerful underwater. At this time, in front of Jiang Hai, it should be a male sea otter. Although it's sleeping and its body is curled up, it's still very big. It's almost a meter long. Its small nose and big front teeth surprised Dai Teeth. Seeing Jiang Hai stand up, Dai Teeth also crawled to Jiang Hai's side and looked at this guy. It's the first time I've seen it, and it looks so interesting. I'll catch you as a souvenir. Jiang Hai is not a person who is fond of old things. But it doesn't mean that he doesn't like these fluffy animals. As soon as he saw this sea otter, Jiang Hai had the heart to keep it as a pet. Mountain lions are not easy to play with, and the procedures are very troublesome, but sea otters are not a problem. No, just before Jiang Hai's hand touched the sea otter may have felt something in its sleep and instantly woke up. Its small eyes, which are the size of mung beans, looked at Jiang Hai in amazement, then it instantly dived to the bottom of the sea. He had to admit that sea otters sometimes had really quick reactions. The moment he saw it open its eyes, Zhang Zian was shocked. Jiang Hai's hand has already reached out, wanting to catch this little guy, but this little guy didn't give Jiang Hai a chance to catch it. Its body was as slippery as an oily cloth, floating on the surface of the water. But once it entered the water, it was the best acceleration device. It didn't give Jiang Hai time to react at all. The sea otter had already disappeared in front of Jiang Hai, leaving only a black shadow in the water. Little guy, I won't let you run away. Seeing the sea otter enter the water, Jiang Hai didn't hold back and plunged down. He is very familiar with the waters in front of his house. Big Idiot has already swept the area. There is no danger, so he is the dragon of the sea. Chapter 277. Splash. As soon as he entered the water, Jiang Hai's eyes swept to his side. At a glance, he saw the sea otter that was rushing forward quickly. At that moment, Jiang Hai also chased in its direction without saying a word. The sea otter is indeed an expert underwater, but unfortunately, this guy's swimming speed isn't that fast. It's just that his reflexes are quick. When this guy enters the water, he's fast. In the blink of an eye, he's already 3 to 5 body lengths away from Jiang Hai. If it took advantage of this gap, it wouldn't be difficult to get rid of Jiang Hai. Although this guy could only swim at a maximum speed of 15 km/h in the sea, it wouldn't be a problem to surpass Jiang Hai. What's more, this guy was much more agile under the sea than Jiang Hai. However, Jiang Hai wasn't easy to provoke. Since he was determined to catch this little thing, he wouldn't let it go easily. The first thing Jiang Hai did was to kick the boat behind him. Using the recoil force of the boat, Jiang Hai shot forward like a torpedo and instantly chased after the sea otter. At this time, the sea otter looked back at Jiang Hai. It was really scared out of its wits. At this moment it was also a little flustered. It sped up and swam forward. Jiang Hai didn't catch it in a straight line, but he didn't care. He just hung behind it and swam quickly in that direction. One must know that the sea otter was also a mammal, and it also needed to breathe. When there was no gap between Jiang Hai and it. As long as it went up to breathe, then Jiang Hai could catch it. This was also Jiang Hai's confidence in himself. However, this sea otter was also quite strong. It knew that Jiang Hai was catching it, but it didn't swim upstream. It still desperately swam downstream. The sea otter's deepest diving depth was only about 50 meters. After a period of training, 50 meters was not a problem for normal people, let alone Jiang Hai. Just like this, a man and an otter swam straight from the sea surface to the bottom of the sea. Who? Originally, Jiang Hai didn't care about where the sea otter went. However, when he saw the reef on the seabed, he couldn't help but curse. He didn't pay attention to it. Reefs and corals were different. Corals were multicolored. Even corals with only one color were grayish-white. Especially in the clear sea water, like Jiang Hai's sea, corals could be seen from far away. However, the reefs weren't that easy to see. At this time, there was only a small group of reefs. If the sea otter escaped into the group, then catching it would be very troublesome. Thinking of this, Jiang Hai couldn't help but speed up. His big hand instantly grabbed the sea otter. However, the sea otter was very smart. It also sped up and entered the group of reefs. Looking at the scene, Jiang Hai couldn't help but shake his fist in annoyance. The reef was very dangerous because there were a lot of aquatic animals living here. For example, eels, sea snakes, or some poisonous things. But since he was already here, Jiang Hai couldn't go back empty-handed. So he thought for a while and slowly swam into the group of reefs. But just as he swam over, he saw a black and white sea snake swimming towards the distance. This sea snake is called the ringed sea snake, a very common sea snake. Sea snakes actually don't have many species. There are only 16 genera and 50 species. They evolved from the ancient cobra. Compared to their relatives on land, sea snakes are less of a threat to humans. This was because sea snakes rarely attacked humans, unless you stepped on them or took the initiative to grab them. Otherwise, this snake is very docile. In the sea, it also has many natural enemies. Almost all large carnivores will eat this thing, so these guys don't have any sense of security. Although Jiang Hai has twice the physical fitness limit of humans, it's still better to be careful under the sea. These sea snakes left, Jiang Hai also breathed a sigh of relief. This is a good thing for him. Slowly touching the reef, Jiang Hai swam in little by little. At this time, he didn't notice that the sea otter actually didn't go deep into the reef group just now. It just hit on the reef near the door. For it, the reef group is actually quite dangerous. After Jiang Hai entered, it quietly left, leaving only Jiang Hai here. Reefs are actually similar to coral reefs. Many of them are wreckage left by marine life, but compared to the colorful coral reefs, reefs are not so beautiful. They are basically brown. Looking underwater, especially at the bottom of the sea, if the light is not too good, it is really a bit scary. At this time, Jiang Hai's place is already about 45 meters under the sea. The sunlight hits the bottom of the sea, so there will always be some reduction. Looking up, he can see his boat, but looking around, it's a bit dark. Fortunately, Jiang Hai is now a skilled and bold person. Plus, he is relatively close to the sea surface, so he still calmly moved forward. Soon, he found an enemy, a sea eel. In the sea, this thing was famous for being stupid. It was ugly and had problems with its brain. Whenever a creature passed by, it would attack, regardless of whether it was able to defeat it or not. Since it wasn't poisonous, Jiang Hai wasn't afraid of it at all. But now, Jiang Hai's main focus is to find the sea otter. It's not worthwhile to find trouble with it, so Jiang Hai bypassed it. But just after bypassing the reef, in Jiang Hai's eyes, he saw a group of green, blue, red, orange, yellow, a mess of colors in the crevices of the reef in the distance. They were quietly staying there, and outside of them, there were some transparent thread-like objects. Seeing this thing, Jiang Hai couldn't help but be stunned. He had only heard of this kind of creature before, but he really hadn't seen it before. At least, he didn't see it in his own coral group. Parrotfish. Muttering in his heart, Jiang Hai slowly swam over. As he swam to the side of this group of parrotfish, Jiang Hai was more certain that this is indeed a group of parrotfish. There are male and female, big and small, about 30 of them. It's really not a small group. When it comes to parrotfish, many people may think of the parrotfish in the fish tank at home. In fact, that kind of parrotfish is not a parrotfish. To be specific, it should be a cichlid. Its scientific name should be blood parrot. To be specific, it is a cross between a red devil and a purple firemouth fish. These two kinds of fish are also regarded as ornamental fish. They are sold in the fish market. The purple firemouth fish is the so-called arhat. It has a fierce character and bites everything. The blood parrot is a cross between these two kinds of fish, so the blood parrot itself has no way to reproduce. It is similar to a mule. Compared to the parrot fish made by humans, this kind of parrot fish is much better looking. This kind of parrot fish is a real parrot fish, also known as a parrotfish. Its scientific name is Cervicus luotian, and it belongs to the wrasse family. The color of this fish was very bright. Male fish were mainly divided into two colors, green and orange and green and red. Female fish were mainly blue and yellow. However, just like human fingerprints, the patterns on the parrotfish's body were also different. This kind of fish tasted good, although their main food was poisonous. Therefore, it is easy to leave toxins in their bodies, but these toxins are not enough to satisfy gourmets. At its most expensive, this kind of fish can be sold for dozens of dollars per kilogram. It is a very expensive and precious ingredient. However, this kind of fish is not very easy to catch. First, this kind of fish lives in the deep sea, and likes to stay in coral reefs or submerged reefs. It is very difficult to catch this kind of fish unless the reefs are blown up. The most important thing is that there are not many people in the world who dare to blow up coral reefs. This makes it impossible for large fishing boats to catch this kind of fish, because no one has the guts to blow up coral reefs. Second, this kind of fish lives in groups, and they are very united. If one of their companions is caught, these fish will swarm and bite the net open to save their companions. A net is cheap, $20,000 to $30,000, and a good one is $60,000 to $70,000, or even $100,000. Not to mention how much you can catch in one net. If the net is broken, you will have to buy a new one. How much would that cost? Therefore, although this kind of fish is expensive, they are well protected. Very few people eat them. Compared to their close relatives, the wavy lip fish, this kind of fish is very lucky. It is as the saying goes, there is strength in numbers. At this time, the thin layer of gauze on the surface of these fish is actually their knitted pajamas. The reason these parrotfish came here is very likely because of the recent warm weather. Otherwise, Big Dumb would have known there are parrotfish here, and it would have helped to drive the fish away. Looking at these creatures, Jiang Hai did not disturb them. However, it is not in Jiang Hai's character to leave just like that. After thinking for a while, Jiang Hai stretched out his hand, and then a trace of spiritual energy was sent into the bodies of these parrotfish. These fish were instantly awakened. By the time they reacted, Jiang Hai had already swam to the surface of the sea. This spiritual energy is enough to ensure that these fish will not freeze to death in winter. He does not know if these fish will stay in his territory. However, Jiang Hai also knows that there is no way to force them to stay. Therefore, after infusing the spiritual energy, Jiang Hai swam to the surface of the sea. When Jiang Hai poked his head out, he could not help but smile when he saw the 4 animals running around anxiously on the boat. These animals of his know how to worry about him. It seems that he has not raised them for so long in vain. Chapter 278. He had to admit that in the United States, planes were not much different from buses. In the United States, there were basically 2 ways for people to travel. One was to drive. This was because all the national highways in the United States were free of charge. Some of the toll highways were built by individuals. For example, New York, Los Angeles, and other highways that led to the rich were charged because they were built with private funds. The state-funded highways in the United States were free of charge, and the price of oil was really cheap. So, if it was only in the neighboring states, it would be very interesting to drive. Besides driving, the second most popular way was to take a plane. Planes in the United States were really similar to buses in China. They were very cheap, and sometimes even cheaper than buses. Of course, this was under the condition that there was a discount. Buses were the third most popular way, and trains were the last. In the United States, trains were actually the most unsuitable way to travel. Not only were they very expensive, but they were also very slow. The price-performance ratio was the highest among all the public transport systems, which was the opposite of China. So, in general, if people were not taking trains to have fun and enjoy the scenery, very few people would take trains. Although Boston and Miami were both geographically located in the eastern part of the United States, the geographical locations of the two were extremely different. One was in the southernmost part of the United States, while the other was not in the northernmost part of the United States. After all, no matter how far north it was, there was still a lonely Alaska overseas. So, if they flew from Boston to Miami, it would be quite far. It was almost the same as flying from Bing City to Hainan in China. The only difference was that Jiang Hai and the others bought first-class cabins, and the flight was faster. After deciding to go to Miami, Jiang Hai didn't wait too long. He couldn't wait any longer. Originally, he was afraid. The more he waited, the more afraid he became. Maybe he wouldn't dare to go in the future. So, after deciding to go, he booked a ticket on the same day. The next day, the flight would depart at noon. On the same day, he made arrangements in the manor. The marine matters were naturally arranged to Edward Anderson, and the ranch matters were arranged to Robbins Garcia. There was nothing to do at the winery after the planting was completed. Dulles Gerard and Connor Murphy were in charge of it. After everything was arranged, he talked to Aphrodite and the others. After a night of preparation, when everyone gathered the next morning, there was a small package beside each of them. With Burke Dollar, Philemon Turner, and Tommy Charles each driving a car, Jiang Hai and others quickly went to the airport in Boston. After waiting in the VIP room, they boarded the plane to Miami. He couldn't help but complain about the flight attendants in the United States. They were all aunties. In Jiang Hai's eyes, the youngest one was probably in her 40s. Even the stewardess in the first-class cabin was the same. Fortunately, Jiang Hai's side was surrounded by beautiful women, which made him feel very comfortable. Along the way, many men's eyes were staring at Jiang Hai and the women around him. Indeed, for these men, nothing was more attractive than beautiful women. In this way, after more than 3 hours of attention, Jiang Hai and the other 11 people landed in Miami by plane. Miami was actually not a very suitable city for living in the United States. The area of Miami itself was not large, and the area of the ocean was very large. Therefore, this city had no super industries. It was mainly based on tourism. Miami was the second largest city in the state of Florida. It was also a world-famous vacation paradise. Its scientific name was God's reception room. This was because many rich people and old people would come to this city to live in their old age after they retired. It was precisely because of the financial support of these rich old people that this city was named the richest city in the United States and the fifth richest city in the world in 2009. In order to make these old people happy, it was also named the cleanest city in the United States in 2008. Although this city was not big, it was one of the most densely populated cities in the United States. With Miami as the core of the metropolitan area, the population was more than 5.59 million. It was the largest metropolitan area in the southeast of the United States and the fourth largest metropolitan area in the United States, ranking higher than Boston. It was second only to New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago, the three leading cities in the United States. Because of its location on the border, Miami became the main city of immigrants a long time ago. In addition to white and black people, it was also a multi-ethnic city of immigrants. There were Cubans, African Americans, Nicaraguans, Haitians, Hondurans, and so on. According to the United Nations survey, the proportion of foreign-born residents in Miami was also the highest, ranking first, followed by Toronto. There were many ethnic groups, different nationalities, no industries, and a lot of old and weak rich people. These factors combined made the whole of Miami look like it was not as comfortable as one would think. This was the largest gathering place of South American drug dealers in the United States. It could be said that this was how Miami developed. In the 1980s, between 1970 and 1990, Miami was the largest drug transfer center in the United States. These drugs from Colombia, Bolivia, and Peru brought tens of billions of dollars to Miami. The money was then invested in local buildings. Luxury car dealerships, five-star hotels, high-end apartments, bustling nightclubs, and many other prosperous scenes began to appear in this small city in the southernmost part of the United States. However, the American government was not stupid. This thing was like selling land. It could make a lot of money in a short period of time. But after a long time, it would be over. That was why Miami was one of the cities with the most police in the eastern region. It was also one of the most strict cities. At the same time, American TV series had been promoting this city, such as the famous Miami Vice, and the most classic fourth generation of Grand Theft Auto, Sin City, which was designed based on this city. However, at the beginning of its establishment, there was always a period of pain. For example, there was a period of time when Miami was extremely chaotic. The drug war, the shooting of tourists, Hurricane Andrew, the Elena Gonzalez incident, and the 2003 Free Trade Area of the Americas negotiations, etc. All of these made Miami's name completely stink for a period of time. However, in the recent decade, with the vigorous management of the United States, there were some improvements. Most of the people in the country knew about this city through movies and Channel 5 of the Imperial Court. The Miami Heat had always been a strong team in the American Professional Basketball Association. Originally, when Shaquille O'Neal was traveling to the East, the basketball market was hot for a while. After LeBron James' decision, the basketball market was hot for another 4 years. For Jiang Hai, his knowledge of Miami was limited to the sun, the beach, and the heat. When Jiang Hai came out of the airport with 10 beautiful girls, the men who were near the airport, or who came to take the plane, or who got off the plane, couldn't help but look at the lineup of a king and 10 queens. There were even some men who were whistling wantonly. Jiang Hai didn't like these people very much. Therefore, after frowning slightly, he ordered the 10 girls behind him, "Let's go quickly. I have already rented a car." At this time, the 10 girls behind Jiang Hai were a little confused. To be honest, they had experienced too much today. This was the first time they took a plane, and it was also the first time they came to this southern city. Feeling the different temperature and style from Boston, they were excited, surprised, and a little worried. At this time, the only support in their hearts was Jiang Hai. Therefore, while looking around curiously, after listening to Jiang Hai's words, they firmly followed Jiang Hai. Before Jiang Hai came, he had already arranged everything. After arriving at the airport, the car that they would take, the hotel that they would stay in, and so on, had all been booked. The black gold card was really not worth mentioning for these trivial matters. Soon, they found the GMC MPV that Jiang Hai had booked in the parking lot. Following the navigation, they went to their destination, which was the hotel they were going to stay in. After these days of driving in Boston, Jiang Hai had no problem driving here. The car drove smoothly on the road in Miami. Soon, the airport was left behind. Not long after, the flat coastline appeared on the right side of the road. That high-quality beach, the golden sand, under the sunlight, seemed to be covered with a layer of golden sand. It was so beautiful. The snow-white waves splashed against the shore along with the sea breeze and the tide, giving off a different feeling. The beach here is so calm. Lying in the passenger seat, Daliana whispered in a low voice. Indeed, the beach here gave people a very quiet feeling, but the beach in Jianghai's fishing ground gave people a very heroic feeling. It really was a different kind of feeling in their hearts. Hearing her words, Aphrodite and the others also quietly looked over there. Their eyes were full of curiosity. This was really an exciting journey for them. As the deserted beach gradually moved away, the city of Miami also appeared in front of Jiang Hai. Although it was only the periphery, it still gave a full feeling. Fortunately, Jiang Hai did not need to drive the car into the city, because the hotel he chose was in the suburbs. The most famous place in Miami was their Miami Beach, and the hotel Jiang Hai chose was on the beach, a 5-star luxury hotel. According to the navigation, they were almost there. Chapter 279. Carnival Group Business Hotel, this is it. Poking his head out of the car window and glancing at the hotel in front of him, Jiang Hai said to the girls behind him. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the girls who had been looking outside also retracted their gazes and looked at the hotel in front of them curiously. Speaking of Carnival, most people may not know much about this brand. Even if they know, most of them think that this brand is similar to an amusement park. But in fact, at least at this time, the carnival that Jiang Hai mentioned is different from the carnival in everyone's mind. The full name of this carnival group is Carnival Cruise Group. This group is a local industry in Miami. It is also the world's largest cruise group. Because their main goal is not in the hotel industry, there are almost no hotels in other cities except Miami. Even if there are, most of them are only on their cruise lines. And the boss of this group, Mitch Allison, is the largest shareholder of the Heat. Of course, Jiang Hai booked this hotel not for this reason, but because this hotel has the best reputation on the internet. Maybe because of the city's business card, this hotel has a good reputation on the internet, whether it is local tourists or foreign tourists. Jiang Hai drove the car and soon arrived in front of the hotel's main entrance. As he parked the car, a doorman came to open the door and take the luggage, but when the doorman saw that except for Jiang Hai, the rest of the people were beautiful girls, these doormen were a little confused. In addition to being a leisure city and a sin city, Miami is also a model city. Every year, a large number of models come here to take photos or attend some rich people's parties, so these doormen have some resistance to beautiful girls. But these beautiful girls brought by Jiang Hai are not ordinary. After all, these girls are originally good-looking, plus the nourishment of Jiang Hai's aura. These girls' figures had undergone tremendous changes. In addition, when they were planting grapes, they also worked hard. Thus, his figure was extremely well-proportioned. It could be said that his body was large where it should be large, and small where it should be small. There was not a trace of excess fat on his body, nor was it conspicuous. He was the type of person who would attract the attention of others the moment he stood before them. Except for Delina and Marion who are still young, the other 8 girls are like ripe fruits, people can't help but want to pick them. Unfortunately, these 8 girls will not let others pick them, except for Jiang Hai. Please come in. However, the doorman still had some experience after all. Although he was stunned for a moment, he still respectfully bowed his head. One person went to drive the car to the underground parking lot, while the other person led Jiang Hai and the others to walk in. Originally, they wanted to help with the luggage. After all, this was a good opportunity to get tips. Unfortunately, Jiang Hai asked them not to bring any luggage when they came out. Therefore, these girls brought very few things with them. In addition to their own set of clothes, their backpacks only had a set of clothes, a set of swimsuits, and a mobile phone charger. How much space can these things take up? So the doorman has been preparing a trolley, but it is a waste of effort. I have booked a room. My surname is Jiang, and I come from Boston. Walking to the front desk, Jiang Hai directly showed his green card, and then said slowly. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the front desk of the hotel also became busy. Hello, Mr. Jiang. You have booked a total of 6 rooms, a presidential suite on the top floor, and 5 business suites next to it. Are you sure you want these rooms? Originally, seeing Jiang Hai's appearance, the front desk didn't pay much attention to him. After all, in this era, a person who travels with a group of girls doesn't look like a rich second generation, but more like an agent of some entertainment company. And these girls are his models. Of course, everyone knows what these models do. But now it seems that they have misunderstood. It seems that no agent can casually book a presidential suite on the top floor, and even book a business suite for his models. After all, the price of the rooms in this hotel is very expensive. Yes, these are the 6 rooms. Book them for me for a week first, then we will talk about it. Glancing at the front desk, Jiang Hai smiled and handed over his Centurion black gold card. As soon as the card was handed over, the front desk's eyes lit up. When she took the card, she unconsciously scratched Jiang Hai's palm, which made Jiang Hai a little excited. After all, since the last time he did it in China during the Chinese New Year, Jiang Hai basically relied on his hands. Although there are many high-quality girls around him, he didn't do it because he didn't want to eat the grass near his burrow. Now that he's out, it seems, card. While Jiang Hai was fantasizing, Daliana, who was behind him, couldn't help but pat him gently. She gestured with her mouth that the front desk had already booked the room card. Jiang Hai couldn't help but smile a little awkwardly. He took his bank card and the stack of room cards. Of course, when he took them, he also touched the palm of the beautiful woman at the front desk. The beautiful woman at the front desk seems to be a Latin American beauty. Her skin is somewhat similar to that of Asians, a very healthy wheat color. She is also very delicate. Her long brown hair is draped over her head, looking really wild. Coupled with the uniform, I can't think about it, or I will make a fool of myself again. After taking the room card, Jiang Hai was led to the elevator by the doorman behind him. Soon, they arrived at the top floor of the hotel. Jiang Hai's 6 rooms were next to each other. After all, Miami's reputation as the city of crime was too well known. If something happened, he could take care of the others. When they came to the front of these rooms, Jiang Hai opened all the doors one by one. After confirming that all the rooms didn't need to be changed, Jiang Hai also gave the doorman a tip of $100. Looking at the green Franklin's face, the doorman's mouth was about to open. At first, he thought that he could get $10 or $20. After all, he just helped to press the elevator. There was no luggage for him to carry, but he was really happy that Jiang Hai gave him $100. Thank you. After sincerely thanking him, he directly left. Jiang Hai also looked at these rooms. The so-called business suite was a 2-bedroom apartment with 2 bedrooms, not divided into the master bedroom and the consort bedroom. They were basically the same size. Each room had a separate bathroom with a shower head, a place to wash your face and brush your teeth, and a toilet. There was a TV, a separate air conditioner, a table, chairs, a sofa, and a computer in the room. There was a large living room outside. There was an independent TV in the living room and a small wine cabinet next to it. There was a lot of wine in it. Of course, if you want to drink the wine, you have to pay for it. There was also a bigger bathroom with a bathtub for bathing. In the middle of the living room was a set of sofas with a small balcony. From the balcony, you could directly see the sea behind. The golden beach and the blue sea. At this time, there were still many people playing there. After all, it was still early. The 5 business suites were all the same. Jiang Hai's presidential suite was even more luxurious. Walking in, there were a total of 3 rooms and 2 guest rooms. The bigger room was as big as this suite. There was a huge round bed, and the TV opposite had its own family background sound. The room had a balcony, and one could see the sea view opposite. In the room, there was wine, water, drinks, and snacks. Most importantly, these things were free. As for the other 2 rooms, one was the same as the business suite, and the other was used as a study. There were 2 living rooms, one for the reception, and the other for leisure. However, they were much bigger than the business suite. Especially the main living room. It was not a problem to have a party here. They might have considered that Huaxia people would come here to play. The bathroom in Jiang Hai's presidential suite had a Huaxia smell. It was a square bathtub with 4 dragon head faucets at the 4 corners of the bathtub. The bathtub was not only good looking, but also had a massage function, which really satisfied Jiang Hai. Tomorrow, we'll go to the clinic that Sandy mentioned. The day after that, I'll take you to West Reef Island. The day after that, we'll go to Bishijing Island. The day after that, we'll go to the Everglades National Park. After that, we'll take a day off. After that, we'll go shopping in Miami. After that, we'll go directly to Orlando. I'll take you to Disneyland Park. Seeing that everyone was very satisfied with these rooms, Jiang Hai clapped his hands to attract everyone's attention. He began to explain the itinerary for these days. As soon as they heard that there were so many places to play these days, the girls' eyes lit up. After all, it was not easy for them to eat and wear, let alone play. But now that they were with Jiang Hai, it was all made up for. Boss, the weather is just right now. We don't need to rest. Let's go play now. After hearing Jiang Hai's plan, Aphrodite's eyes lit up, and she suggested to Jiang Hai. Indeed, if they were to stay in the room and guard the beach outside, they would not be able to sleep even if they wanted to. Instead, it was better to go down and play. Chapter 280. Well, okay, you guys go back to your room to change into Shanghai clothes first, and then we will go to the back to play. Hearing Aphrodite's words, Jiang Hai didn't say much. After all, these people have experienced a lot, but they are actually still young. With the help of Jiang Hai in the past few months, they have gradually walked out of the shadow of the past. Jiang Hai is also more willing to see them like girls, not like when he first saw them. Yeah. Hearing that Jiang Hai agreed, these girls couldn't help but cheer, and then quickly went back to their rooms to prepare. As for Jiang Hai, he also changed into a pair of beach pants and prepared to bask in the sun. After all, for him, there is nothing to play with in the water. If there is any treasure under the sea, it may arouse his interest. But after all, this is the beach. There is no treasure, so Jiang Hai is going to play on the shore. Jiang Hai waited for about 10 minutes before someone knocked on his door. The first people to appear in front of him were Delina and Marion. These 2 girls were already 15 years old this year. Their swimsuits should be considered the most conservative among all the swimsuits he has. But even if it is conservative, it is rare to see a one-piece swimsuit for elementary school students in the United States. The most conservative one is the bikini. It's just that the style is relatively old. The upper body is not only made of 2 pieces of cloth, but it is similar to a corset. There are a lot of cloth above and below the 2 pieces of cloth, outlining the upper body lines, but nothing else is missing. The lower body is also a pair of swimming trunks, but there is a small skirt outside, covering all the places that should be covered. These 2 sets of swimsuits were chosen with the help of Clive, probably based on the clothes worn by her sister at this age. Jiang, we are ready. Seeing Jiang Hai come out, Delina and Marian couldn't help but smile. Okay, but we have to wait for them. Seeing that the 2 girls are getting more and more beautiful, Jiang Hai is also comforted. Just as Jiang Hai was talking, the doors of several other rooms were opened, and then the other girls, all wrapped in a layer of towels, came out from inside. Seeing that they are all here, Jiang Hai didn't say much. He waved his hand and led everyone downstairs to the bathing area. While taking the elevator, Jiang Hai's group still attracted a lot of attention, but Jiang Hai's outfit is very normal. After all, they came to Miami to play, especially staying in this hotel. It would be a pity if they don't go swimming. The elevator stopped 3 times on the way down from the top floor. Except for a man in a suit, the rest of the people were all wearing swimsuits. There was even a burly man who was only wearing a pair of swimming trunks. Originally, a pair of swimming trunks was very normal, but this big guy looked to be about 2 meters tall, at least close to 300 pounds. That big pile of fat was tightly wrapped around by the swimming trunks. If one didn't look carefully, it really was very difficult to see that his stomach was blocking the triangular trunks. But even so, he still felt very good about himself. After getting on the elevator, he saw Jiang Hai and the others and took the initiative to talk to them, but Aphrodite and the others didn't even bother to look at him. But he didn't care. Finally, they came to the first floor. Jiang Hai and the others got out of the elevator and walked towards the passage behind the building. The whole hotel's main entrance is next to the road, and behind it is the hotel's own private beach. People who have been to the beach before know that the beach is not something that can be entered casually. For a seaside tourist city like this, the beaches are divided into 2 types. The first is the public beach that everyone can go to for free, also known as the public bathing area. The quality of the beach is not bad, but the environment will definitely be affected. There are all kinds of people, but it is a good place for the citizens to go to have fun, but don't ask for too much. The second is the private beach, just like in Jiang Hai's manor, or the back of the hotel. This beach and the shoreline of several meters has been booked by the hotel, or bought out by the hotel. Only the guests of the hotel, or the guests who came to have fun and paid for it, can enjoy it here. The carnival's bathing area is still very good. Although it is charged, the price is still relatively affordable. Some white-collar workers who are not willing to squeeze with others can also afford to come here to have fun. Therefore, there is still a lot of traffic in this bathing area. On this beach, there are about 100 people here. However, compared to the empty beach, hundreds of people are not too many. Basically, they are scattered in different places to have fun. When Jiang Hai and the girls around him appeared, many of the guests who were still playing around stopped their movements and began to stare at Jiang Hai. Oh no, the beauties behind him. Many people would use the excuse of playing games to slowly approach these people. Some men who were originally sunbathing on the beach would deliberately turn their bodies sideways to let the sun shine on their Apollo's belt, hoping to attract the attention of these girls. Unfortunately, these girls do not care about these men. In their eyes, there is only one man. Thus, these girls stepped forward with their fair and tender little feet, crushing the glass hearts on the ground. Seeing that these girls are not easy to hook up with, many people have already given up. However, there are still some who are there, eyeing covetously, waiting for an opportunity to approach them. Jiang Hai actually does not care about these men, because first, he is only protecting these girls, not monitoring them. If these girls have a sweetheart, he will let them go. Second, it depends on whether these people can walk into the hearts of these girls. Therefore, Jiang Hai just glanced around and decided on their location. Let's do it here. There aren't many people here. As soon as Jiang Hai's voice fell, the girls stepped on the soft beach and came to the deck chairs that were already prepared for them. These reclining chairs are free, and can be regarded as a benefit of the private beach. When they came to the reclining chairs, these girls also took off the bath towels that had been draped over their bodies. As the bath towels were taken off their bodies, the sound of saliva being swallowed could be heard. Because these girls have absorbed Jiang Hai's spirit energy, and because of the beef that they usually eat, their bodies also have spirit energy. Therefore, their figures are quite good. Their flat abdomens and four-pack abs are faintly visible, but they are not protruding and do not look fierce. Their slender arms and legs, full upper body, round lower body, and three-dimensional collarbones are all extremely eye-catching. Coupled with these girls' originally very beautiful bare faces, they are even more attractive than most men. And the most shocking thing is their swimsuits. In fact, when Jiang Hai saw the swimsuits on their bodies, he was startled. This was because there was something wrong with them. Jiang Hai has seen these girls' swimsuits before. They are very conservative bikinis, and they are less fabric than Daliana's and Marian's swimsuits, but they are very limited. After all, these swimsuits were designed with the help of Mrs. Philemon and the others. These old women have always been on guard against these young and beautiful girls seducing their husbands. Therefore, although the swimsuits that they chose are not very strange, they are basically similar to what ordinary high school students wear. They are not ugly, but at least they are not very good looking. However, when these girls took off their towels, Jiang Hai was stunned. The swimsuits on these girls are not the ones that Jiang Hai has seen before. They are all new, and the style is completely different. For example, the one that Aphrodite is wearing is a white swimsuit on the upper body. It is double-layered, with an inner layer and an outer layer of mesh lace. Other than covering the important parts, the big V in front of the chest and the sides are not covered. There are a total of 2 straps. One is white in front, hanging around the neck, and the back is made of a thin silver metal. Although the bottom is not the legendary t-shirt, it is not too far off. The 2 sides are tied together by 2 ropes. The kind that can be taken off directly as long as the rope is unbuckled is indescribably tempting. Dinah Taylor's swimsuit is black. There is not even a strap on the top, just a black bib with a small flower on the chest. It is the same for the lower body. It is the kind that can be taken off as long as the strap is unbuckled. Apart from them, Hilda, Paige, Sheila, Ohilia, Bridge, Tanis and the others are all wearing swimsuits like this. The only difference is that the material and color are slightly different, but all of them are the kind that can directly appear in some adult men's favorite magazines. Seeing Jiang Hai's dumbfounded expression, Aphrodite and the others are a little embarrassed. How is it? Does it look good? But as the eldest sister, Aphrodite still walked in front of Jiang Hai. She purposely spun around in front of Jiang Hai and then said to Jiang Hai with a smile. Okay, wait. Where are your original swimsuits? Who told you to wear this? Jiang Hai subconsciously wanted to say that it looks good, but when the words reached his mouth, he swallowed them back. This plot is not right. Where did the original pure and innocent girls go? This is what your guest, the lady called Prawalton, told us. She said that if we want to have sex with you, then we need to let you know our beauty. She said that this will be effective. Seeing Jiang Hai's 3 parts embarrassment and 7 parts shyness, Aphrodite knew that there is no problem with her strategy. Thus, she took the initiative to sit next to Jiang Hai. Her 2 long legs, regardless of Jiang Hai's feelings, directly crossed in front of Jiang Hai and rubbed up and down. What nonsense are you talking about? You guys play, I'm going to look at my phone for a while. Feeling Aphrodite's movements, Jiang Hai is dazed. Chapter 281. TSK, you don't mean what you say. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Aphrodite couldn't help but get up and slap Jiang Hai's thigh, almost hitting his vital part. Then, regardless of Jiang Hai's mood, she walked directly to the sea in the distance. Seeing Aphrodite's action, Jiang Hai also sat up from the recliner all of a sudden. This girl really dared to hit him. Before Jiang Hai could react, Dana Taylor also ran over, but she was much more reserved. She just patted Jiang Hai's arm and left with a smile. Under the lead of these two girls, the following girls deliberately ran to Jiang Hai and patted him on the shoulder or on the back. Anyway, everyone touched, oh no, patted him before going into the sea. Facing the waves, these girls ran into the sea. But because these girls don't know how to swim, they didn't swim in, but just played by the water. After these girls left, Jiang Hai also calmed down for about 10 minutes, put on his sunglasses again, and lay on his recliner. Daliana and Marian, who were beside him, hesitated for a moment before walking over. Jiang, is it sexy to dress like that? Marian bit her lip and asked hesitantly. If that's the case, then we can wear it too. Compared to Marian, who is still a little shy, Daliana is much more open. She sat directly on Jiang Hai's recliner, raised her small face, and said to Jiang Hai with a proud face. Don't be arrogant there, just stay there obediently. But hearing her words, Jiang Hai didn't have any expectations. He pressed one hand on each of their heads and rubbed them hard, then Jiang Hai lay down again. Seeing Jiang Hai's lazy look, the two girls couldn't help but threaten Jiang Hai with their hands, and then went to the sea to play with Aphrodite and the others. As for Jiang Hai, he didn't really play with his phone, although it's not easy for him to do anything to Aphrodite and the others. But after all, Aphrodite and the others are indeed beauties. If he would rather play with his phone than look at the beauties, then this person is either a gaming nerd or has a psychological problem. Although Jiang Hai also likes to play games, he hasn't reached the extent of addiction. So he just half lay there, watching the beauties in front of him play with the water. It's really a different feeling. After playing for about an hour, they were a little tired. Daliana and Marian ran back first, lay on the recliner, drinking juice, and chatting for a while, and then fell asleep. After sitting on the plane for more than 3 hours, although it's a first-class cabin, it's actually very tiring. Originally, Jiang Hai wanted to let them sleep first, but they were a little impatient, so they naturally played for a while and were a little tired. Not long after, the sound of steady breathing passed into Jiang Hai's ears. Looking at the two girls curled up like kittens, Jiang Hai couldn't help but shake his head. You really don't know how to take care of yourself. After saying that, Jiang Hai stood up, walked in front of the two girls, picked up the towel next to them, and covered them with it. Looking at the two girls who looked exactly the same, but very quiet, Jiang Hai also smiled. Jiang, can I trouble you with something? Just as Jiang Hai quietly looked at the two girls in front of him, Aphrodite's voice sounded softly beside Jiang Hai. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but look over curiously. Prawalton said that sunbathing by the sea is very comfortable, but I need to apply some sunscreen on my body. I don't know if you can help me apply it. Seeing Jiang Hai looking over, Aphrodite couldn't help but take out a bottle shyly. Jiang Hai took a piece. It's indeed sunscreen, and it's newly bought, but it seems that Aphrodite came prepared. However, Jiang Hai can't say these words. Under Aphrodite's begging eyes, Jiang Hai nodded slightly stiffly. Seeing that Jiang Hai agreed, Aphrodite also smiled, then pulled Jiang Hai to her chair and lay down. Looking at Aphrodite's perfect back, Jiang Hai couldn't help but swallow, but since he agreed, he couldn't say anything. He squeezed some sunscreen out of the bottle. Jiang Hai first applied it on his hand, then touched Aphrodite's back with trembling hands. It says to start from the neck, and you must apply it thickly. The instructions also say that you have to apply more than 2 millimeters for it to be effective, otherwise you will still get sunburned. Feeling Jiang Hai's trembling fingers touch her back, Aphrodite's body also trembled, but soon calmed down, and then Aphrodite whispered. Oh. Hearing Aphrodite's explanation, Jiang Hai was really a bit passive, because he really didn't know how to do this thing. He had never done it before, but no matter what, there's always a first time, so he'll just treat it as practice for the future. Jiang Hai took a deep breath to calm his slightly trembling heart. Then, he placed his hand on Aphrodite's neck. The moment his fingers came into contact with her delicate skin, Jiang Hai could feel it in the depths of his heart. However, he forcibly stopped himself and slowly moved his hand along her neck. Cough, he began to smear it on her neck. After he finished smearing her neck, he went to her back. Just as Jiang Hai's hand was halfway smeared, Aphrodite's hand suddenly moved. In front of Jiang Hai's eyes, she undid the chain on her back. In an instant, her swimsuit was draped in front of her. From Jiang Hai's point of view, he could even see the hemisphere on the side. Don't leave it here either. Seeing Jiang Hai stop moving, Aphrodite continued. Oh. Jiang Hai swallowed another mouthful of saliva, and continued to move. His forehead was already faintly sweating. Soon, the back was finished, and it was the bottom, but here, Jiang Hai really didn't know what to do. Below, you also have to apply more evenly. Feeling that Jiang Hai's hand was no longer moving, Aphrodite took the initiative to pull Jiang Hai's hand over and pressed it on her waist, then with a gentle tug, she untied the ropes on both sides of her swimming trunks. As her hands moved, something that shouldn't be seen instantly appeared in front of Jiang Hai. Looking at the round shape, the gap in the middle, and the special place in front of the gap, Jiang Hai suddenly felt very thirsty, and he didn't know where to put his hands. However, Aphrodite gritted her teeth. Now that things had come to this, the arrow on the bow had to be released. Therefore, she continued to lie there, her hands grabbing Jiang Hai's large hands, and slowly sliding them down. After pausing on the round shape for a moment, he changed the point of attack to the gap. When Jiang Hai's fingers entered the gap, Aphrodite's body had already begun to tremble uncontrollably. This allowed Jiang Hai to recover from his initial shock, and he immediately continued to slide his hands down to her legs. Although she felt a little empty in her heart when she felt Jiang Hai's movements, Aphrodite still had a lot of feelings. She also didn't want to provoke Jiang Hai too much. Well, actually, there was no way to provoke him anymore, or else it would be real. She allowed Jiang Hai to apply on her legs, and before long, Aphrodite's legs were completely covered by Jiang Hai. Cough, it's okay now, I'm going to wash my hands. Seeing that he was finally finished, Jiang Hai immediately wanted to leave, but how could it be so easy? Aphrodite had already sat up and grabbed his hand just as he was about to leave. There's still the front that hasn't been applied. My hand has to protect this side. Seeing Aphrodite gently bite her lip, Jiang Hai originally wanted to leave, but at this moment, his legs couldn't move. Looking at Jiang Hai's appearance, Aphrodite couldn't help but laugh. She lay back on the chair, not caring that the sunscreen she just applied had already dissipated on the chair. As mentioned earlier, she had already unbuttoned her top, so when she came over, her upper body was actually naked. Therefore, her two hands, one on the left and one on the right, covered the two most important places, and appeared vaguely in front of Jiang Hai. Boss, I'll have to trouble you to apply the front for me. Aphrodite said slowly as she looked at Jiang Hai. This time, Jiang Hai really didn't know what to do. His whole body just stood there stiffly, neither moving forward nor retreating. Seeing Jiang Hai's stiff appearance, and most importantly, seeing that Jiang Hai was still wearing loose beach pants, Aphrodite turned her back to the beach in the distance and completely faced Jiang Hai. She loosened her hands, and in an instant, Aphrodite's perfect front appeared in Jiang Hai's line of sight. Feeling Jiang Hai's burning gaze, Aphrodite didn't care. Instead, she directly reached out her right hand and gently placed it on Jiang Hai's mysterious protrusion. This startled Jiang Hai and he immediately took a step back. Do you need me to help you? Seeing that Jiang Hai was a little panicked, Aphrodite smiled and then whispered to Jiang Hai. She also knew that this place wasn't a place for real swords and spears, so she secretly pointed to her mouth. This kind of action was even more tempting for Jiang Hai. At this time, there were two little people in his heart, one saying, "If you don't do this, are you still a man?" The other side said, "Rabbits don't eat the grass near their burrows. What happened to your persistence in the beginning? Did you feed it to the dogs?" Now Jiang Hai was really caught in a dilemma. If he knew it would be like this, he wouldn't have come no matter what. "What are you doing? Go away." Just when Jiang Hai was a little at a loss, a sharp voice suddenly came from the distance. This voice was very familiar to Jiang Hai. It was the voice of one of the 8 girls, Sheila Rodney. Following the voice, Jiang Hai looked over and saw 5 men standing in front of the 7 girls. He knew that trouble was coming. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.